welcome to the Giants of Backlog. We're three friends getting together to talk about games in our backlog. I'll be your host this week. I'm Paul.
I'm Jay.
And I'm John.
This week we're going to talk about A Plague Tale: Innocence. So the reason we decided to create this podcast was we got together and we were talking about our ever-growing backlogs, and we thought, well, what if we make a game club where we pick a game and play through it every 2 weeks and actually get our money's worth out of these games. So just a heads up, this is not a review show. We're going to go deep dive on these games. We're going to go deep dive on Plague Tale. It will be heavy spoilers. We're going to talk about the story. We're going to talk about everything Plague Tale. All of the ratty spoilers. So if you haven't played Plague Tale yet and you don't want to see spoilers on it, pause the video right now, play it, and come back. So another thing you can do, if you like the podcast, share it with your friends. Encourage them to go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever podcasts are found. It helps us a lot. Word of mouth marketing is the best kind, especially because it's free. So I think with that in mind,
We should crack a beer.
yeah.
Yep, sounds good to me.
So if you're at home and you're of age and want to drink along with us, feel free to join us. This should be a laid-back discussion about games, friends, drinking beer.
Yeah.
Hopefully eating pizza later.
Yeah.
Pizza, beer, and video games, the perfect combination.
Today we have an IPA from our local brewery where we go once or twice every week. And that's a bad pour.
That was a really bad pour. That was a Cheers pour.
That's not good. That's everyone's first impression of me.
I'm gonna do a better pour. The pour was not much better.
That's better. It is a lot better.
It
We're
was-
talking about the head. I mean, you're about 4 times better than.
Let's see what Jay can do. Pretty good.
Alright, cool. Let's let it off.
Alright. So one thing we always do on the show is we started off by cracking the beer and playing Old Greg. So I'm gonna pull up the Old Greg video and we're gonna play, and you guys feel free to play along with us.
We're actually playing it.
We should play it. Not 100% sure if we can clip it into the video due to copyright stuff, but we're gonna play right now either way. Rules are simple. It's about a 10-minute video. Rules are pretty simple. There's just 3 keywords that when you hear them you drink: Old Greg, Bailey's, and the Funk, and they come up.
Yeah, it's a good game to get real drunk to.
It's a game that John and I always played before we started drinking.
Jay and I have played Old Greg probably 1,000 times at this point, and that might have been a year ago we played 1,000, so we've played enough Old Greg, but we'll keep playing.
Alright, here we go.
Full screen.
Hi there. Who are you? I'm on Greg.
Great.
Pleased to meet you. What you want? Maybe I should ask you the same question. What you doing in my waters? Just taking the air, no
guys need refills, let me know. Let me keep the cap off and just keep myself topped off.
Yeah.
Hello, Greg. What? Hello, Greg. Where am I? Greg's place. You been asleep? Do you want a little drink? I'll get you a drink. You like Baileys? Creamy. So cream with beige. Delicious. You like old Greg's place? I've got all things that are good.
Done some nice things with it.
Stop this. This is good.
That's nice.
You can have it.
Oh, fine, thanks.
I'll keep it here for you.
Well, is this the way?
Now,
Let me skew in. Got meetings. And I've got a nice waiting for me, so perhaps I should be.
why are you going? We got everything we need here. We got Baileys, cream, and everything we need. I'll get you another Baileys.
I'm fine. Thanks.
I do watercolors.
Do you?
Let me show you something.
I don't know if I've ever played this with IPAs.
Yeah. I don't know if I have either.
I call that one Old Greg.
Should have maybe brought down a light beer.
And that one, I call that
Do
one
smaller
Old
sips.
Greg.
It's fair.
You know what I call that one?
Oh, Greg.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I got some more. I got these too. That one's Baileys. That one's Baileys, a bit bigger. And that one's as close as you can get to Baileys without your eyes getting wet.
That is quite a portfolio you've got going on there. But I really should be heading off, so it's been good.
Do some watercolors together. You and I.
Well, that sounds like great fun. Let's do it in the week, Greg.
What do you mean?
What, you free Thursday at all?
Why can't we do it now?
Well, you know, I'm a busy man. You know, I've got things to do. I'm in town.
Do you love me?
Oh, dear.
Do you love me?
You love me.
Don't have to turn it in here, that, Greg.
Do you think you could ever love me?
It doesn't really work like that, Greg.
How does it work? Tell me how it works.
Well, you get to know someone, you hang out, you see where that goes, this, that, the other, eventually, you know. I don't know you.
You know me. What about the boat times?
That wasn't really a time, was it, Greg? That was more of just an exposure.
How was that first date? You pulled me up with your strong arms.
Oh dear, look, Greg, I don't know you.
Oh, you know me. You see my downstairs mix-up?
Yeah, I didn't ask to see that, did I?
What did it mean to you to see that? Did it mean you love me?
No, it didn't.
Could you learn to love me?
No, I couldn't. I don't love you.
You do love me.
No, I don't.
You do love me.
No, I don't.
You love me.
When you see me, when you know me.
Hello, Greg.
Yeah, I know you are. You've told me 89 times now.
You must love me exactly as I love you.
Well, I don't love you. And to be honest, you're starting to get my nerves a bit now. If anything, I find you slightly pathetic. To deal with that.
Maybe I will deal with it. Maybe I'll deal with it the way I dealt with Curly Jefferson.
You know what, Greg? Maybe I was being a bit hasty there. I said I didn't love you. Perhaps now in this light with you and the tutu and the water playing off your seaweed, maybe I could love you. Maybe I was lying because when you do love someone, sometimes you say you don't because playing hard to get, playing a game.
Games?
Yeah, I was just playing a game with you.
Love games?
That's right, love games, Greg.
Love games? Do you love me? Are you playing your love game with me? I just wanna know what to do 'cause I need your love a lot. Come on now, you love me.
Is it?
So,
Is it ever enough?
for now?
I think we can do it where we put it in like to the bottom corner of the video.
Yeah.
That would be cool, yeah.
We definitely could.
And if we reacted to it like we usually do instead of just awkwardly sat here watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to see how it went with putting it in. You could always
I
take
like
out.
it. I like Old Greg. I like adding it. I think it's us. For sure.
Well, now that we've loosened up,
I drank like a glass and a half of IPA in the last 5 minutes.
what's new this
Loose.
week?
This week, I went, I golfed with Mitch Friday. I had no drive. I couldn't hit a driver straight to save my life. I was hitting irons off the tee because I couldn't do it.
Wow.
It was bad.
You
So
guys get better.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the range a couple times this week probably.
It is nice being right by one.
Yeah, the Royal or that one, but the one right there.
Yeah, the golf club.
I don't mind it, but did that, and then yesterday went on the boat and got way too much sun, and now I'm like orange. But
Yeah, did you guys see my pickups in the game league this week?
No, I didn't.
I saw, yeah, you got Lone Echo 2 and Victoria 3.
Yeah, so on, what was it, Friday, Paradox announced Victoria 3, which is a follow-up to their grand strategy franchise, Victoria. The last Victoria 2 came out, I
We
think
should-
in 2014.
We should maybe preface this by saying we're all part of a fantasy game league where we it's like fantasy football, but you add games to your roster, and then when they come out you get points based on how well they review. The website is fantasycritic.games. It's completely free for now at least, and it's something that we all got into this year, and it's nice because we stay up to date on game news now.
Yeah. I completely recommend it for anyone who's got a group of friends who like to play games and want to stay up to date and want to play like a fantasy type league like this.
Might have
It's
friends who aren't into sports.
like I'm into sports too, but
Yeah.
I super enjoyed this. It's the same kind of format, same kind of style, but forces you to keep up to date with all the announcements of everything that's coming out this year. I'm not someone who's I couldn't have told you. I couldn't have named 3 games that came out last year, but now I can name 50 games that are coming out in the second half of this year. So I mean, it's really nice to keep up that way. I know there's like 5 games that I really want to play that are coming out this year that I wouldn't have even heard of before. So I think it's really cool. I really enjoy it. Plus I'm winning right now.
It's just fun to be excited about games.
Yeah. Lone Echo 2 was a good pickup though. I saw you put that fancy critic or that open critic link in there.
Yeah, so Lone Echo came out, I think in 2017 for Oculus, and yeah, it's just like a free floating VR space shooter. So it was pretty interesting. I don't know if you saw, only 9 critics reviewed the original Lone Echo.
I saw the Lone Echo 2 on the list, as I'm sure everyone has seen it on
Yeah.
the list. It's maybe second page. I saw it and like I didn't realize the original reviewed that well. I saw like Lone Echo 2 and I just wasn't super excited about it, but I didn't look up Lone Echo 1. And if I would have looked it up and saw it the first reviewed that well, maybe I would have, snagged it. But look, seeing how good it reviewed, like that's a good pickup for you for sure.
Yeah, it looks fun. Games like that, they make me want to pull the trigger on VR.
It's tough though, right? Because there's only like 5 games we're playing right now.
There's probably more than that, we just don't know.
Yeah, if
Because
we looked into
Yeah.
it, it might be okay.
What are you thinking here?
Well, there's a lot that are console exclusive, John. So if you buy one headgear, you might not be able to play some of the games you want to.
That
Yeah, that's
sucks.
true.
And isn't like VR like $1,000 per console?
Yeah, the new ones.
It's expensive, yeah, the newer headsets. But you can get like an Oculus Rift for like $300 or $400. And they don't have to plug into a PC, they're standalone, so they're cool. You can play most of like the really popular VR games that you're referring to on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't it Oculus that makes you log into a Facebook?
You have to log into Facebook?
Facebook owns Oculus,
I don't have Facebook.
Yeah, I think you're right. What are the big ones? It's
I'd have to
Steam,
log into Chrissy's Facebook.
There's Oculus, and then there's one more big like VR headset company.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Who is Lone Echo on?
Echo, I think, is Oculus exclusive.
I'm surprised though, because Oculus isn't that the biggest one? I assume that because I have heard of them.
It might be, but I think Steam's the Valve Index headset is pretty popular too.
Yeah, they had the PlayStation VR for PlayStation 4, and that was like the most affordable one because it was like $200, $250, I think.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess it makes sense because Lone Echo came out in 2017, right?
Yep.
And VR was like tiny back then, so it makes sense it only had 9 reviews.
Yeah, HTC Vive was the other company I was trying to think of.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know, it looks cool. I'm excited for VR. I'm hoping the new PlayStation VR system is going to be really good and it's just going to get developers to care a little bit more.
Hopefully, I mean, everyone's been excited about VR for like 10 years, you know?
A lot of games too, like Resident Evil Village, you can, I don't know if it has support right now, but they're going to add support for VR down the line.
Well, they remade, what was it, Resident Evil 4 for VR.
Yeah.
That's cool. But, yeah. Yesterday was my sister's baby shower. It was fine. Watched her open gifts. I played some cornhole, and we put all the dogs in the garage, so I made it my job to watch the dogs. And
How many dogs?
3. And
Okay.
I sat in the garage and I took a nap. So it was a good way to get out of it. But then my whole family gave me shit like, "Where were you during the party, Jay?" And so, you know, I got out of it, but I still got hell to pay for it. And I drove up north to my parents' house, and I got there at 10 p.m. Thursday night. And one of my guys, not to bring work into this, but he was finishing a power study, and I had to review his stuff. So like I had to jump on a work call immediately, and my whole family like freaked out. Like, why are you working at 10 p.m.? I'm like, because this guy's gonna pull an all-nighter.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's tough.
And then actually we have another power study going out today. That's why I gotta keep an eye on email. But
Do you have to, like, so you still got shit to do today?
well, I already reviewed it. I told him I'm good with it. I just gotta make sure he sends it out. So,
Okay.
ugh.
And then
Yeah.
John and I have been
It's
playing
Sunday,
Warzone.
just so everyone knows. Like, this guy, he works too much.
Too much. Yeah.
John and I have been playing a lot of Warzone this past week.
Did you download it?
Yeah, did you download it?
Are you up to date? Because it's like,
No.
if we ever want to play and like you're online, we're all online, we're like, oh, let's play Warzone. It's like every single time there's a Warzone update, it's like 500 gigs. It's ridiculous. That game, it's
Yeah.
stupid.
The update, like just a few days ago, was 15 gigs.
I
They
got
added
it.
Sylvester
So
Stallone
they had
from
2
Rambo.
skins,
They
basically.
added John McClane in Die Hard, and they put
Oh.
the tower from the first Die Hard into the game. And there was an achievement, jump off the top. So John and I did that one day.
Yeah, we need you to play with us because it's tough.
With just 2.
We've been playing with our buddy Chris, but he plays on a laptop from 2014 with integrated graphics.
And the mic jack is broken, so he doesn't play with a headset.
Yeah.
So we hear everything he hears the entire time, and that's not good for a battle royale style game.
Yeah, so I was like tabbing out to mute him when
Sorry,
there were,
Chris.
when there were fights because I couldn't stand to hear the audio leaking in.
I muted him for like 2 games.
And then we're spectating him, and like it's so weird because like his FPS is like 15, and he's like running past people, and we're like, "There's a guy right there." He's like, "Where?" So
He just needs to buy a new computer. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
yeah, or he needs to play older games.
Yeah. quick side note, when Chris and I were kids, he had a Call of Duty clone shooter that he got out of a cereal box code,
Yeah.
and he played that every single day. When I go over his house, he'd play it, and he was like the top of the leaderboard
I
for
believe
that
it.
Yeah.
game. But
I mean, Chris is good at video games. It's if he upgrades his hardware so it doesn't hold him back, I'm sure he'd be good at Warzone.
It's a testament that he gets kills, I think. Because if I wish we could see how bad it looks.
Yeah, the fact he gets any kills. Like, there was one game where I think he got like 2 kills and like he was alone and he wiped another team. I'm like, how?
I
It makes
watched him.
no sense. Were you versing babies? And the answer is yes, he probably was. They're probably like 8-year-olds.
I watch him play H3 or League, and it's crazy that he's as good as he is because it's like 2 frames per second.
That's crazy,
And
yeah.
he's just gotten used to, like, I select and it'll register 3 seconds later, and
Like,
at the time my skill shot. It's weird.
It's nuts because, like, with me, I hate playing anything if I feel like I'm not giving myself a chance, right? It's like,
Disadvantage.
if I'm playing at a disadvantage, I won't play it because, like, well, if I could be this good, but I play really well and I'm only this good because my hardware's holding me back. I'm not even gonna play that game because I want to be this good, you know.
Right.
But I guess he just lives with it.
Yeah, when I think about his experience in games, I imagine it's like a haunted house with like a strobe light, and just every strobe you see the guy getting closer, and there's a delay. So
That's hilarious.
I think it's impressive that he holds his own.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good at games for sure, and that's what lets him do it, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't do it. But we might have been on Chris as a subject for a little too long.
Sorry.
Hopefully he doesn't watch this.
Chris, if you're watching this, buy a better computer,
Please,
please.
it would help
It'll help
us.
us all.
Okay, you guys ready to talk about Plague Tale?
Yeah, let's get into it for sure.
So it's actually a Plague Tale, Innocence.
I know it's got one of those titles, and it's not like it's a sequel or anything. It's the first game, but that's the name of it. It's got the colon thing going on.
And if you're paying attention, you can notice that there's a poster of
Amicia!
Amicia
Sorry for your
behind us.
ears.
And we're gonna do this going forward. All the games that we play, we'll add a poster to the wall until we fill it up, and we'll figure out what to do from there. Maybe make a bigger wall behind us.
Yeah, we'll figure it
It'll
out.
take us a while. I mean, it
It's
should
gonna
be
be
your goal to have us fill this wall.
That's true.
Right.
If we can keep this thing going until this wall's full, thank you.
Guys, I don't know
That's a
if
future thing.
before we get into Plague Tale, I don't know
Yeah.
if we've ever done this, just so the audience can get to know us a little bit better. I think we should say like a couple favorite games that we really identify our personalities as gamers with.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. That sounds good.
Somebody want to go first?
I'll go.
Alright, John, go ahead.
I think for me, what defines John, good to see you. I think for me, what defines my early childhood in gaming is PlayStation 1, the Spyro trilogy, and then some into PlayStation 2, but those platformers for sure. Going into middle school and high school, played a lot of Call of Duty and FPS. And really, multiplayer games is where I lived for the most part, with some solo mission games here and there, but lived in multiplayer and League of Legends and Call of Duty and Hunt Showdown till like this point that we started the podcast. But since podcast got me back into single player games and really enjoying that alongside playing multiplayer with these guys.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, two of my favorite games, I would say Persona 4, which I actually just played recently. I beat it maybe a couple months ago. I played 5 back when it came out in the US in 2018, and I loved it. And then Jay played 4, and he told me I had to play 4, and it's got all those Persona shticks. It's got a hot spring scene, and your teacher is like horny and has a crush on you. So it's got all the anime tropes, but it's a great visual novel slash turn-based combat game, JRPG. Love it. And the other game would probably be original Dark Souls. Love the boss fights. Love the world interconnecting. Another Japanese game. There's a lot of JRPGs that I love, but yeah, those would be the 2 for me.
Yeah, when I was young, I couldn't convince my parents to buy me a console, so I was mostly PC games. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Carnivores. That was my shit. You hunted dinosaurs. It's great. And then Carnivores 2 as well. But eventually I wore them down and I got a PS2 where I played Spyro, Shadow of the Colossus, all the PS2 games. And through like 15 years I played consistently Age of the Empires 3, which is, there's a pretty small community there that was playing that for that long, but
Small but dedicated.
yeah, if you go and look up ESOC TV on YouTube, they still hold tournaments, and they just came out with the Age 3 Definitive Edition, so it's kind of revitalized that community, which has been nice to see. But yeah, as a kid, I mean, I had a Game Boy. My first game, I think, actually was Pokemon Blue. And that's what really started my love of video games. And I'm a huge fan of Gears, the Gears series, all of them. I love them. I've put so many hours into that multiplayer, and I love the campaign too. Even though it's a bro dude man shooter, it's got some nuance, and I really like it. But yeah, I play a lot of multiplayer with these guys. We were in the league for a while, played Hunt Showdown a lot, and really I've been trying to keep up and play as much games as I can, so I've played a lot throughout the years. I made the switch from PlayStation 2 to Xbox 360, and that's where I really began to love Halo and Gears. And then I have all the consoles since then, so I just get them all.
Yeah, you got a PlayStation 5 coming.
Yeah, PlayStation 5, Paul sniped for me, so Paul's gotten me the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, so
Yeah. Pro tip, if you guys want to order one, if you're having a hard time, follow Twitter stock drop accounts. Turn notifications on, so if you see it on your phone when they tweet. I didn't even have notifications on anymore because I got a PS5 a couple months ago, but I just happened to be on Twitter scrolling when one of them tweeted, and I went on and ordered one for Jay the other day, so that'll be coming here in a week or 2.
Paul's a good guy. He watches out.
Yeah, now that they both have PS5s, Paul's gonna give me his older PlayStation so that I can play some of the games. Because unlike them, I haven't kept up with consoles. If you guys might notice, I play everything on PC, and except this one actually, I played it on my Xbox One. But most games I play on PC, and really haven't bought all the consoles at all. But
But out of my top 5 games, it's Persona 5, Persona 4, Gears 2, and Age of Empires 3. And I'm on the spot and I can't think of more, but there's no particular order. That's kind of my gaming background.
Yeah. That was a good segment, Jay. Thanks for suggesting that.
That was good. I like that too.
So comment and tell us what your favorite games are and why they're your favorite games. Let us know a little bit about you as a gamer.
Our community.
Love to read that.
Nice.
Alright guys, we ready to jump into 14th century medieval France and talk about some Plague Tale
Where they speak English? Yeah.
Hell yeah.
with French accents.
I played the game in French.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
No, I didn't.
Pretty cool.
Probably should have. If I do a second playthrough ever, I'll probably put it in French.
I played Persona 5.
It seems so
Japanese
unenjoyable.
original soundtrack. It was pretty interesting, but I did like it better with English, just not having to read.
It seems unenjoyable to me to play a game in not English.
I played Sekiro in Japanese, and I went back and played one playthrough in English, and I turned it back on Japanese because I just thought the voice acting was better.
That would make sense, right? If they're speaking Japanese lines.
Well, everybody says you gotta play Metro in Russian.
Oh,
In
I
Russian?
should do that. You're
Yeah,
right.
because the Russian
Same
accents are
thing.
kind of bad in English.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It like makes a scary game funny.
Yeah.
Arthur, walk through this dangerous task.
Yeah.
Don't give me backspace.
Yeah, it's
Terrible
pretty-
Russian accents.
Pretty bad Russian accents, but yeah, let's jump into Plague Tale.
Let's do it.
Alright, so the premise of Plague Tale. So you're playing as. I'll get to that.
Okay.
You play as Amicia de Rune, a 15-year-old girl who is recently orphaned and must save her younger brother Hugo, whom she's barely known since he's been quarantined his entire life due to a mysterious illness. You work to uncover the mystery of his illness and why he's being hunted by the Inquisition. So, now that we've all played through the game, let's go ahead and let's hear some hot takes. Jay, do you want to tell us your hot take?
Sure. My hot take is that children don't run that fast.
It's a good one. My hot take is that this game has better combat than Last of Us, the first one.
I got a hot take. And you guys better be ready. Hugo's a little bitch, and if anyone else was the main character, it would have been a better game. That's my hot take. Fucking kid is like, he's the one with all the powers, yet he's not the main character of the game. That tells you he's a little bitch and he should have just died at the beginning.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not my take from the game.
Alienating.
Oh.
Stay on the little end of the table.
I'll be in the short end.
Alright, well, that's
We'll get
very
into
hot
it.
take.
You want me to get into it a little bit? I'll get into it a little bit.
Get into it.
Hugo's a Harry Potter character. The guy who has all the power, who the prophecy's about, yet doesn't let anyone help him, and ends up fucking shit up.
That's fair. You're not wrong.
Yeah, and it's hard to like be on Hugo's side because like you're Amicia, you're trying to help him the whole time. Oh, Hugo, I love you even though I don't know you, and you know,
Yeah.
you got some disease that I'm trying to help cure. And then every single time, toward the beginning of the story, even till like the very last chapter, he's just running away. I want my mommy.
He is
All
5
this-
years old.
I don't care.
He is 5.
He's 5.
He's
but
allowed to want his mommy.
I don't want to play a story about a 5-year-old.
So,
I'm not saying the game was bad. I liked the game, but I can do without like children being the main character of games.
I think, John, they intentionally made him useless and helpless so that as Amicia, you have to take care of him.
Yeah,
Right?
he's always fucking running
If he
away.
was capable, then Amicia would be like, yeah, whatever, you handle it.
Right.
Yeah, I do wish they would have explored that a little bit more. Because when I was playing through, I never just like left Hugo somewhere unless I had to unless the game forced me to. I just carried him, like held his hand the whole time.
Yeah,
There's
'cause
never
it
a
was-
reason not to.
It was a mechanic to like leave him places.
Yeah, like they introduced that and then they didn't really follow
Use it.
through with it.
They didn't use it at all.
And I
You
wish they
just
would've.
You just drag them with you the whole time.
Yeah, because there's no, you don't ever need to. Like, it doesn't slow you down. There should, like, maybe they could have had a debuff when you're holding his hand, where, like, if you're holding Hugo, you just go slower. But we do know he's a faster runner, so I guess it does make sense.
Fucking light speed.
Yeah.
Faster than Usain Bolt.
As I mentioned, though, it is set in the 1300s, like the same time as the Black Death plague, and the graphics are like absolutely amazing. Like, this game is the best representation of medieval Europe that I've ever seen in a video game. Like, high praise for the team who made it. Like, it looks amazing. It plays great on the Xbox Series X.
Second hot take. When I saw how many rats there were, I burst out laughing out loud. It was like comical how many rats there were. Like, and maybe it's like realistic, because there are a lot of rats, right?
There are a lot of rats.
But seeing, like, in the first scene where the rats come out, seeing 1 million rats, I laughed. I couldn't help myself. I'm like, what the hell is this? Not saying I enjoyed the game, but the number of rats was a little funny to me. I was just assuming.
Yeah, you assumed right.
Okay, yeah.
What do you think about this setting, Jade?
I liked it. I know there's a number of games set in this time period, but I think it was a unique take. I thought they did a good job of making the rats ever-present presence, and just it was foreboding. It was dark, and I think they hit the mark on what they were going for, setting-wise.
Yeah, I agree. Very immersive game. I have a note on here, like, what are our thoughts on the soundtrack? But the soundtrack wasn't particularly memorable to me. You guys feel differently about it?
Nope. I couldn't tell you one bop from there, but maybe they were going for that.
Like, same. I think, I assume that the entire soundtrack was probably background noise. Like music, but I couldn't
Yeah, it's pretty good.
tell you.
It sounds fine.
Yeah.
Alright. Well, I think the way I've structured this episode is we're gonna just go through, so
Do you want to take a break?
yeah, let me set it up and then we'll take a break. So, like, the way we're gonna go through Plague Tale is the game has chapters. There's 17 chapters, so we're gonna talk through chapter by chapter, and we're gonna, in each chapter, they kind of introduce new things, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the crafting system, gear upgrades, collectibles, etc. that you are presented with in each chapter. But before we do that, we're gonna take a break.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Be right back.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. So we're gonna get started with talking through Plague Tale, and the way I thought I'd structure this was I'm gonna bring us through chapter by chapter, because the game is broken up into 17 different chapters, and you play through each chapter and the story progresses, and some time passes in between sometimes, and I'm going to talk through what happens, like broad overview, and then we're gonna dive into what we want to talk about based on our notes when we played through the game. So chapter 1, the Darun Legacy. So the game starts, you're in a forest, you're playing as Amicia, and she's with her dad Robert and her dog Leon. You're in the woods, and there's this mini game that you play where you're trying to hit apples out of a tree using your sling. You're role playing, like Amicia is pretending she's one of the captains of the guard or something along those lines. And it's kind of tutorial-esque. And your dog Leon smells a wild boar, and he starts chasing after this boar. And you use your sling to kill the boar. And your dad is like, "Good job, Amicia, I love you." And then Leon like smells something else, and he takes off chasing it. And your his Amisa, you're following him, and you can't find him, and you hear Leon like yelp in pain, and it's like, oh no, and you get to this clearing where he is, and he's like, you see another dead boar first, I think, actually, like something destroyed this dead boar, and then you find Leon, and he's like halfway in this hole, and he's in pain, he's been hurt, and he gets pulled into this hole, and it's painful. Something is like eating him alive, and your dad shows up, and he's like, oh, we need to leave right now, and he pulls you out of there, and you go back to the Darun estate, your home.
So, for me, the saddest part of the game, right here, just being that close to saving your dog and watching it get eaten alive.
Yeah, I think she grabs him, and like she like tries to help.
Yeah.
This is where I lose all my fans. I don't care about dogs.
It hurt. I was sad too.
Yeah. I felt so bad because the dog's just too stupid.
Yeah, the dog doesn't know.
So there's some sad parts later on, but I thought this part was sadder than any of the other deaths.
For me, because the game was so, like, I thought this game was going to be scary. Don't do good with scary games. I was just like, I didn't feel anything in it. I'm like, alright, good. It's not me dying. I'm not getting sucked down the hole. We're good here. We're moving on. Game wasn't scary, as you guys know. But at this point, I still thought it might be. So I was happy with it. But not happy with it. Dogs dying sucks.
One thing I thought this highlighted was like the voice acting in this game is incredible, and like the voice actress who plays Amicia like does a great job. Like you hear the emotion in her voice, the distress, and it's just overall really well done.
Yeah, I thought the voice acting was really good.
And we joked about how they do dumb French accents, but Sobo Studio, they are a French studio, so they're trying to throw some love. For sure.
So, were they doing? Did they actually have French, like, voice actors doing real French accents, or was it like people trying to do a French accent?
I know you can play through the game in French.
Yeah, I won't ever play this game again, probably. I don't think, but I would be if I did. I would play through it with the original French audio. I don't know if there's going to be any way to find out if her voice actress was like French American or something, or a French person who spoke English. I think the English is a little bit too good to be somebody who really like
Is
their native
French.
language was French, but well done in any case.
Yeah, I liked it.
So after Leon dies, you go back to the Darun estate, your castle, and your dad tells you to go tell your mom what happened, that he needs to like her to come down so he can talk with her. So you go up to your brother's room, and like Macy doesn't normally go in her brother's room because her brother has this mysterious illness, and he's been quarantined his entire life. She doesn't even really know him at all. She has spent very little time with him, if any. So you go into Hugo's room, and your mom is like annoyed that you're there, and you kind of explain to her what happens, and she's like, stay here. She goes to find your dad. And you're from Hugo's room, you see out in the courtyard that the Inquisition has arrived. And your dad's out in the courtyard, and he's talking with this guy from the Inquisition, and all of a sudden he's like down on his knees, and there's soldiers from the Inquisition all around, and they're talking about like, where is he? And your dad's just like, I'm not telling you shit. And this guy, this big scary guy with a full metal helmet,
And he's like a foot taller than everyone
he's
too.
huge, he's ripped, takes out his greatsword and beheads your dad. And Amicia's like, no! And now all these soldiers start attacking all the servants and the people who work at the estate, and it's like, I think this is where I remember the soundtrack being subtle but very good. It's intense music, and it fits with the theme of what's going on. And you go grab your brother, you hold his hand. He's a 5-year-old little boy, and you're like, we have to run. And he's scared, and it kind of introduces like the stealth system where you're crouched, you're hiding behind stuff to stay out of sight. and you're working to sneak out of the castle as all of these Inquisition soldiers are rushing in, just killing the servants.
Yeah, as I was playing through this part, my first note of the game was that the stealth feels really good. Like, there's so many games that I hate the stealth sections because it's unclear when people will see you, how far away. Here it seems very rigid, set in stone. You know when somebody will see you, you know when they won't. And every time I died, I felt like, yeah, it's my fault. I walked out when I shouldn't have. There's nothing where like, what, you could see me from all the way over there? That kind of deal.
Do you remember? I can't remember. Is there any kind of indication of like alertness meter
There
that
is.
fills?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure though.
You're
Yeah,
right.
and it's tuned very well. Like Jay was saying, when you're seen, you're like, yeah, I should have been seen there. It felt fair.
Yeah.
And I thought this chapter did a really good job of introducing the sneak system and introducing like classic sneak mechanics where you throw something and to distract a guard, and then you can sneak behind them, and like I said, it felt very fair, which makes the game good because it's such a sneak based game. If the sneak system was bad, it would be a bad game for sure.
It's a good tutorial too, because it didn't feel like it was holding my hand too much. Like, yeah, there was some tooltip I read about how to do stuff, but it wasn't super immersion breaking. Because like your primary ways of interacting with the world are you have a sling that you can like whip stuff at, but you have to stand up and you expose yourself, and it's like loud when you throw stuff, or you can like just throw rocks or whatever ammo you have. Pots,
And you can throw them from behind cover so that you don't have to show yourself while you're throwing if you don't use your sling.
That's like the sneaky way.
Let's take a step back for a minute.
Yeah.
We all played this on Xbox, right?
Yep.
All of us?
Yeah.
So, I thought, and we didn't really talk about it, in the first section where you're shooting your sling at apples in the tree, that introduced your sling, and I thought the sling felt so good on an Xbox controller. The
Yes.
feedback you get from the little vibrate when it's ready to swing, and then when you throw it.
And the visual cue. Visual cue when and it didn't take long for it to be ready. Like the visual cue where it changed to like gold or something, like ready to throw. It's locked on.
Yep.
I thought it was very good.
Yeah, it was very tight and consistent, and it just felt good to use.
And it was cool because like a sling is a weapon that I've never used in a game. For me, coming from a guy who hasn't played a ton of games.
I'm
So,
trying to think of
Nothing
other
comes to
games.
mind for me.
So it was new for me anyway. Maybe for you guys, you can talk to.
Yeah, I think maybe there was a sling in Far Cry Primal.
Oh, well, you want to talk about Far Cry Primal?
No.
Side story.
All right, let's do it. Let's hear it.
Jay and I lived together during one of our work assignments during college. We lived in an apartment together, and we love Far Cry. We played through all the Far Crys, starting from 3, when I think Far Cry kind of started as like a
mainstream.
real
2 was
like
very
mainstream
good,
game.
too.
I've never played 2, but if it's good, I'll play
2
it.
was before Ubisoft, I think.
Maybe we'll play 2 on this.
We should.
We should for sure. But anyway, from 3 on, we've played all the Far Crys. We co-op them. Like, we have so much fun playing Far Cry. We lived together, and Far Cry was coming out at midnight. And we were so excited. We were going to pull an all-nighter. We were going to go to work. It was going to be terrible. I worked in a plant at that point, and I was going to have the worst day of my life the next day, but didn't care. I was going to pull an all-nighter playing Far Cry. Far Cry Primal comes out, and it's like a 4-hour download. And we're like, shit.
That's what we didn't factor in was the download time.
Yeah, so we're like, shit. Like, obviously we're not going to stay up waiting for it to download. We're playing as soon as we get home from work tomorrow. It's going to be the best, and we'll pull an all-nighter tomorrow. Just playing this game that we are so excited for it to come out.
Let me preface this a bit. So
No, you get
we
no
were
side of the
we were
story.
up till midnight waiting for it to come out. So we were all hanging out, and we drank a lot.
Yeah.
That's what we did. So we drank up until midnight. We were bummed, and then we went to bed. So, continue on with your story.
So I get up. I was always the first one up because I worked an hour away from the apartment. I worked in a plant, so I had to be there at 6 a.m. So I got up a little before 5, got ready, left the house, drove to work, worked all day, driving home, super excited. Like, we're going to play Far Cry, we're going to play Primal, we're going to play it all night, super excited, gonna do all this. Get home, him, Jay, and our roommate Pat are like, I get there, I'm like, let's do this, and they're already playing. I'm like, why are you guys already playing? Why didn't you wait for me? They're halfway through the game. They skipped work and didn't tell me, and I get home and they're already halfway through the game. Long story short, I went to bed, I laid in bed sad all day, and I stayed in bed for 2 days. Not in bed, like I would go to work, I'd come back, but after I came back, I wouldn't go to the living room. I would go back to the bedroom and I'd lay on my air mattress in the bedroom, just listening to them play Primal out in the living room, and until they beat it. And to this day, I still haven't played Far Cry Primal. It's the only Far Cry I haven't played because Jay ruined it for me.
Yeah, typically I like to think I'm a pretty good friend. That was one of my weak points, and I think I was a pretty poor friend at that point. The side of the story from my side is that our other roommate and I go to work. We get to work at 8, so we woke up a couple hours after John. I woke up, the room was spinning. I walked sideways out of the room.
Yeah, I did that too, but then I still went to work.
Yeah, and I open the door and I see our other roommate, Pat. He's throwing his clothes in the dryer because they're wrinkled. And I'm like, I feel like hell. And he's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, okay. And he goes, do you want to stay home from work? I was like, yeah, I do. And so I texted my boss, oh, I'm not feeling well. And I didn't come in. And so did Pat, and we had the best day. We were handing off the controller on desks. We got Jimmy John's and Duncan. We were sitting there. It was a lot of fun, but
Sounds fun. Sounds like
feels
it's really
bad,
fun.
and John always brings up this story and uses it against me. But I think there was a sling in that game. Don't quote me though.
Okay.
We could maybe play Primal for this.
I've never played
We
Primal
should play
either.
Primal for this. So what Jay's trying to say is, I should have played a game with the sling before, but I haven't.
Yeah. Sorry.
And I figured it's okay.
Alright, that was a good little side story. But back to Plague
It's a
Tale.
bad side story.
Bad for you, good for us. So you eventually sneak out of Hugo's room and through the kitchen, and you run into your mom, Beatrice. And now Beatrice is sneaking with you. You're trying to escape this estate from the Inquisition. And you're sneaking with Beatrice, and it introduces some other mechanics. Like we talked about this a little bit earlier. You can like tell Hugo to stay put, and you don't have to hold his hand. And they have some segments where like, Amicia, you need to sneak without Hugo, because if Hugo's with you, you won't be able to do it. And they never really have any other situations that I can think of where you have to do that again. But they introduced the mechanic. Maybe other people used it. Let us know if you used the mechanic to leave Hugo behind to go do something. Anyways, so you're getting close to getting out. You're in the garden, and you just have to go through this gate. And Beatrice tells us that, she gives us a little information, and she tells us that Hugo he has this illness, and the only guy who can cure it now is Father Laurentius. So find Father Laurentius. That's your task. And she has you sneak out the gate. You run into this gardener who's going to let you out the gate, and as he's letting you out, just the big guy from earlier who beheaded your father comes. Lord Nicholas is his name, and he's like, get them. And you go out, and they close the door, and you just hear like a sword going through somebody's chest, and you assume it's your mom. So now we think mom's dead.
Yeah, the sword comes out on the other side of the door, covered in blood.
It's traumatic. They freak out. Good job on the voice acting again. And then you have to run. You run through the forest, and you're being pursued by all of these Inquisition soldiers, and it's really intense. And you get to this overhang, and there's this river, and you and Hugo jump into the river to escape. And that's the end of chapter 1.
So, they do this in probably 70% of all stories ever. They start out, it's cozy, you have a nice family, everything's happy, and then there's a catalyst, and then from that point on, the conflict's introduced, and their world is thrown into turmoil. And so the catalyst, I think, here is either your dog getting eaten or your father getting beheaded.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, nothing's the same again. And I think it did a really good job at this moment of introducing the stakes and introducing the urgency of the rest of the entire 17 chapters to come.
Yep.
The tone gets set right here, right now, and you're introduced to the big bad, and I thought it was well done.
Yeah, you understand that they're ruthless. They're gonna kill you on sight. I feel like you said, with the voice acting, just the level of emotion that they portrayed the whole way through, like, it was believable. You know, it's good, like really good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they set the world up and then they knock it down. And that's the reason we have the game. The game is what happens after. Any other comments on the first chapter, guys?
No, it was cool that you see all these places, and I do this a lot in video games, where you see a place that's warm and cozy, and then later in the game we return to this area and you see how much it's changed, and it's cool that the world has permanence, and you get to see what's happened since then has affected your home area.
Yeah. So in chapter 2, you emerge from the river, and you're trying to follow it to the next town over, and you eventually reach it, and you get there, and there's nobody outside. You're running or walking through the town, and you see all of the doors are closed and boarded up, and some of them are marked with these like white X's, and nobody is. You're just like going. You're knocking on doors. You're like, "Hello, help us! We need help!" And just nobody's coming out to help you, and you don't see anybody. And as you're making your way through the town, you run into these like witch hunters, and you figure out that they're like there's some kind of plague going on, and they're kind of hunting people who might have the plague to quarantine them or kill them. Or it's not really clear if they're killing people. I don't remember. But they're definitely, you don't want to get caught by these witch
I think
hunters.
in the town square they might have had a few people hanging when you come across that. So
Was
it's
it
like
hanging or was it fire?
Burning them.
burning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you run into these witch hunters, and they are like, "Oh, get them!" And it starts this chase scene running through this town, and it's pretty linear is where you're supposed to run. You go into a few buildings to try to lose your pursuers, but these people are chasing you, and it's really intense. And eventually you run into this house, and there's this old woman, Clovey, I think her name was, she's like, come in, you hide in her house, and the hunters go away because they remark that that's a part of the town that was hit really hard by the plague. And Clovey gives you clothes, new clothes, because your clothes are all wet and ruined from swimming in the river. And you get some equipment, and I think that's the first spot where you get to use a workshop to upgrade your sling. And you can upgrade your sling so it does, like, it's faster to get to the point where you can throw it, and a bunch of different upgrades they introduce. Like, one of them that I really liked was you can get it ready, and then you can shoot more than one rock. Or whatever, pellet. I think it's stones, right? And Oh, Hugo doesn't realize that Beatrice is probably dead because he's 5 years old, and he keeps the whole time he's like, I want to go find mommy.
Yeah.
And Amicia's not telling him that she's dead because he's 5 and he can't handle it. And he's upset. He wants to go try to find his mom, to find Beatrice. And they're having this argument. Amicia's like, no, Hugo, we need to stay here. And Hugo's like, no, I want to go find mommy. And he leaves Clovey's house. And that's probably the first time you see his super speed. He crawls
Yeah.
under a wall and he
And he's
sprints.
out.
He books it. And Amicia has to chase him. And he gets into trouble. There's this big guy who's like leading the witch hunters with all this armor on. And you have to, this guard's like grabbing him, and you have to use your sling to shoot a, like, chuck a rock at his head, and you kill him. So that was pretty powerful, that scene after you kill him. Amicia is kind of like, what have I done? And there's like some remorse that she's murdered somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So she has like a second where she's like, oh no, and she feels sick. But then she gets over it really fast. And there's this mini boss fight with that armored guy where you have to use your sling to knock the armor off of him and expose his head. So then you can chuck a rock at his head and kill him and save Hugo.
Yeah, just to go back into like the chase scene, I thought this chapter was one of my favorite chapters in the game. Running through the town, like you said, it was linear, but you'd go into areas where there was a puzzle, almost like a little bit of a puzzle, not very hard, but the music and just the atmosphere created the sense of urgency. Like, I better figure this out quick, better get out of here fast. And it felt like sometimes I wasn't very fast, but even though I wasn't being what I thought was fast enough, I was having, like, gotta go, you know?
Yep.
And I felt like it really set it up well, and I thought that this chase scene where you're being chased by those witch hunters through the town was probably one of my favorite parts of the game, just because of the atmosphere that it set up, and like the sense where I'm just struggling, like I gotta go faster. I can't believe like it's taking me this long. And I had one part where I was not fast at all, and the witch hunter, and by this point I thought I was so slow that maybe they never catch up to you. Maybe they never actually get to you. It's just like this sense of urgency that's created, but it's not real.
Yeah.
But then he ended up like being in the room. I'm like, oh my god, it's actually, I gotta get out of here. Like, gotta go. And I just got out before, he got to me. I'm like, this was a
Yeah.
fun, good part. Like, I really enjoyed that.
And they break it up too. Like, you do go into like some buildings and there's an enemy in there and you gotta throw a rock to distract them so you can get past them.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just kill them. When I was playing it, I was just like, okay, Amicia is 15 years old. Like, I don't want to just have her be killing people left and right. It just didn't feel authentic to just take your sling and just crack them in the dome.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to use like the stealth mechanics that they introduced and throwing rocks to sneak past people.
Yeah.
But the pacing is pretty good for these chases.
Yeah, I want to talk about the mini boss at the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
The mini boss, when I fought him and won, that's when I thought, this game is dope. Like, I thought this boss was so fun. You had to dodge, get behind him,
Yep.
knock off different pieces of armor, and then you finally beat him.
Does he have like a big hammer or something that he swings at you?
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. I think this is the only part of the game, like, where you needed to dodge.
Yeah. Well, what about? Yeah. Okay.
They introduced dodging,
They
and
did, yeah.
this boss was good for introducing dodging, but it's one of those mechanics I felt was underused.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, you're right. It's another thing where they're like, okay, here's this thing we're gonna give you, and there's never gonna be an opportunity where you need to use it again.
Yeah.
I used it throughout.
Dodging.
Well, yeah, I would just like to get places faster.
No.
Oh, speed running.
Just speed running the game using the dodge.
Yeah, I did that a lot. I would dodge in between bushes to get there faster. I thought there was a couple fights later on where you used dodge to get out of the way of rats coming at you or
Okay.
stuff like that. So
Okay.
I still used it later on, but this boss fight in particular, I thought was a lot of fun.
It was.
It was short though.
It was short, and it wasn't too challenging either. Really thinking back on it, I don't think I died here. I think I beat him my first time.
I think I might have died here. I think this might have been where because I have a note that says like one hit, like is death. So I think this is where I discovered that like
Yep.
you get one shot by everything,
Yeah,
which I like as a mechanic too in a stealth based game.
I died once or twice before I realized I had to use dodge.
He
behind him.
he'd swing that hammer or club or whatever it was, and then he was like stuck because he had to like go like, ugh, I gotta pick it up.
Yeah, the classic video game thing.
Yeah. Good intro boss fight though.
Yep.
So after you kill him, you run into this church and nobody wants to follow you there, I guess, because there are a lot of dead bodies and people are afraid they'll get the plague. And that's the end of chapter 2. So chapter 3, Retribution. So while you're in this church, you're kind of exploring, and there's a collectible in here that you can get. The collectibles were, I didn't run it. Honestly, I didn't get too many of them, and I didn't really look for them. I did find the one in here just because I didn't know how to get out of the church, and I was just kind of looking everywhere until I found like the ladder where you climb up into the rafters. But eventually, you get out of the church and you go to this like courtyard in the church, and there's this priest there who's trying to like cleanse the bodies and perform last rites and bury them. And you talk to him, and he's like, "Oh, you can't be here. There's a plague." And you learn that like these rats who you've seen are, maybe you haven't seen them yet at this point, but they say there's these rats that are biting people, and the bite is causing them to get sick with this plague. So this priest is like, you can get out of the city if you go down into the catacombs of the church, and he's gonna take you down there and help lead you out, but he wants to talk to his buddy. So the priest, so you go out into the catacombs with him, and he's got a torch, and he's like, and then I think that's where you see the rats for the first time, is down in the catacombs, and you learn that the rats don't like light. Light keeps them away. So he gives you the torch, he goes to do something, and all of a sudden there's like this rumbling, and a ton of rats come out.
Comical amount of rats.
Yeah, like a ton. It's funny how many rats. It's just thousands of rats. All of a sudden they're just everywhere. And he gets devoured by those rats, and you're left with Hugo and the torch, and now you've got to find your way out by yourself.
So what I liked about this section is they introduced what you use the rest of the game, and that's puzzle solving in the form of using light. Right?
Right.
And so I liked how it set up. It was a pretty easy section. But you need to eat your vegetables before you get to the meat of the game, where you learn, okay, if there's light here, I'm safe. If I extinguish this light to take it somewhere else. And seeing the priest getting eaten alive by the rats was really brutal
Yeah.
and jarring to me, that he
He's screaming.
and then if you walk over his spot with light, you see his
Corpse.
skeleton there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, gotta watch out for these rats.
Yeah,
You
can't
know?
walk into these ever. Can't ever let your light go out, or else you're done.
Yeah. So it set that up well, and it created this urgency of you always have to be in the light. And I thought this section was well done, but a little bit easy and forgettable.
They do a very video game thing where if you want to climb over a ledge, you can do that, but you got to put your torch down first.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't climb over this ledge and carry your torch, so now you lose
better
it.
find light on the other side.
Yeah, and then there's like random braziers that aren't lit that you can light with your torch to create like a safe zone, and that's part of the puzzle solving that I think you were talking about, Jay.
Yeah, isn't this the one with the 3 statues where they and only one of them has light
Yes, and you
in
have
the
to
catacombs?
you got to figure out how to light the other ones to safely traverse through the catacombs.
Yeah. So it was okay. I don't think there's much else to say in this chapter.
Yeah, it's good. It looks very good. It's very dark down in the catacombs. It's a lot of detail there. But eventually, you make your way through the catacombs and you emerge outside of the city, and that's the end of the chapter. So in chapter 4, the apprentice, Amicia and Hugo are making their way to Laurentius's farm, which is out in the countryside nearby. So you start walking through this forest, and there's these Inquisition soldiers all around. You gotta sneak past them, and it's like getting dark, so they're kind of trying to finish whatever they're doing so they can go be safe away from the rats. And there's so many dead pigs. There's all these dead pigs that have been calmed, and they're everywhere. And at sunset, the rats come out and start feeding on them. But anyways, you get to Laurentius's farm, and it seems abandoned. But you make your way into the farmhouse, and you meet Laurentius and his apprentice Lucas. And Laurentius has the plague. Like, he's bedridden and he's very sick. And he tells you about the Darun blood curse. And in the blood curse, Hugo has, like, it's in every member of the Darun's blood, but it's dormant in most of the descendants, except Hugo has it active, and it's the cause of his mysterious illness. And he tells you that you're playing as Amicia, you have to continue your mother's research on the cure in order to help Hugo. And he says that Lucas knows a lot about it because they've been working on it too this whole time. So you go with Lucas to the alchemist lab, and Lucas introduces you to Ignifer, which you can craft using materials that you kind of picked up as you've been walking through the game. And you can make Ignifer, which is like sulfur and alcohol. You craft that, and then you can throw it to create like a fireball, and it'll light stuff up, or it'll just like burn some rats.
So, the pools of blood that you have to walk through and the pig guts was really gross to me, especially the noise. I don't know how they recorded that noise, but it was gross.
Yeah.
And just to see all these dead pigs is really, you know.
Yeah, it sets the mood.
The piles of dead pigs literally create the boundary of where you can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one part where there's a live pig. It's the only pig that's alive on the farm.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to like corral him to the spot and get the rats to swarm him and eat him alive so you can get past them.
Yeah, that part was really tough for me. I did not want to use that pig as bait because I felt really bad for it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's cruel.
It felt worse than like when the priest got eaten.
Yeah.
Because you were the one who made it happen.
Yeah, you
It was on
forced his
purpose,
fate.
you know? It wasn't just like, oops, that happened. It was like a sacrifice for you to move forward.
And then Hugo's like, Amicia, no, Mr. Piggy!
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough. But a lot of these, you're seeing piles of dead pigs. You're seeing all this chaos, and there's a lot of jarring imagery in this game. Where later on we see battlefields
Yeah.
where it's the same thing as the pigs, but with human bodies.
Yeah, well, that's the next chapter. So
What you guys think of Lucas, though?
I liked Lucas.
yeah, I like Lucas.
I liked He was like just like that helpful sidekick. He had a lot of information, so he was useful.
And
Like
now your party grows to 3, right?
And I like that too, the party building aspect to it, where
character.
where like your group, you're moving through and you're adding people who are useful to you and like growing connections with these people, you know.
Yeah, I think I mentioned, but Lucas is Laurentius's apprentice, so he's in the know.
Yeah. What do you guys think? We haven't brought it up yet, but the looting and collectibles.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about that when you were talking about the collectibles and how you found a collectible at the top of the
At the
rafters,
church.
and
Yeah.
I honestly, personally, I think collectibles work better in open world games than in linear story games because you can make it a side point to go and collect them all. Whereas like in this game, I found some collectibles. I'd see a collectible on the wall and I'd collect it early,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, all right, cool, I'm getting the collectibles. But then I realized the only thing that they're good for is like opening up the menu and like reading some blurb about that collectible, and I was like, all right, I don't actually care about this. I don't care if I get these collectibles.
Yeah, there's a scene where like Lucas gives Amicia a flower, and he's like, pretty. And then I guess there's more flowers that you can find
I
throughout
found
the
a
game.
few of them, and she put them in her hair for that chapter, and then the next chapter it'd be gone.
And that's it. That's all it
Yeah,
does.
I noticed I was the only one out of the 3 of us to get the achievement for finding half the flowers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have to really go out of your way to find some of those.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this game. Like like the urgency we were talking about earlier. I never felt like I should stop and explore because it kind of pulled me out a little bit.
Because you're always being chased is the idea. You're always being looked for. Like looking for collectibles didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, and we did Bioshock 2, and we talked about those collectibles. Go check that episode out. And we talked about how the collectibles in that game, they're everywhere, and they're easily accessible, and they're really interesting. And I thought the collectibles here were pretty forgettable. Like if you weren't achievement hunting, there's no reason to explore and do all that. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, you know, I'm always achievement hunting.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go out of my way to try to find some of that stuff. But in terms of like the material that you find, most of my upgrades were for bigger bags so I could carry more shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you find a lot of it, and I didn't like the feeling of finding something not being able to pick it up, so I try to craft as much as possible so I could pick up the stuff so I could be ready.
Right.
But
Yep.
and I thought they spaced those well, those little cash
Yep.
boxes where you could find collectibles. And wasn't there like a
No,
permanent
the actual
upgrade?
useful stuff, not
Yes.
the
Yeah, not
collectibles, right?
collectibles, consumables I meant.
Yeah, so there were like different rarities to different like crafting gear. So alcohol and sulfur was everywhere, and that's what you use to make ignifer that we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
And you use ignifer a lot, but there's more rare materials that you use to like upgrade your pouches or upgrade your sling, and you kind of have to be strategic about when you use those because they're limited, and unless you're like really combing every area, you're not going to find enough to fully upgrade everything.
Which I actually liked was the consumables were not only consumables for upgrades, they're also consumables for building like your useful items. So if you want to make an ignifer, you have to use sulfur and alcohol, like you said.
Yeah.
But sulfur and alcohol were also components to upgrading your sling.
Yeah.
So if you use them to upgrade your sling, maybe you can't make an ignifer. Or if you need to make 3 ignifer to beat this section, now you can't upgrade your sling. Like I really enjoyed how like the consumables were
Spaced out in the rarity.
they were rare and they were common between upgrades and usable items. So like you couldn't just find them and then use them for upgrades. You had to think like, do I need to make something to get through this section before I use it
right.
for upgrades?
There was a risk reward there.
Yeah.
In the game, like there's some more rare consumables that you can craft. Like you can make one, it's called ambrosia. I think it's called ambrosia, and like if you get grabbed by a guard, you can press a button and throw ambrosia at this guy, like smash it in his face, and it'll put him to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And you're safe, like you're not gonna instant die. But now you've wasted rare consumable materials on that.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it added some strategy to what you spend your consumables that you find on.
Mm-hmm.
So the chapter wraps up. You go to the laboratory to make Agnifer, and now you're gonna go back to Laurentius, and there's like this rumbling, and there's like an explosion as all these rats emerge from the ground, and they start swarming the farmhouse where Laurentius was, and a bunch of like alcohol spills, and it gets ignited, and the whole farmhouse explodes, and presumably killing Laurentius. And you are really sad, but you just kind of have to flee the farm with Lucas.
Yeah, Lucas is really broken up about it because that's his teacher. You assume he spent a couple of years there,
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah, and he never, like, Lucas never talks about his parents at any point, so you'd assume that Laurentius is like a father figure. So, like, yeah, Lucas is pretty broken up about it.
Yeah, Lucas is like Amicia's age, right?
About, yeah.
Yeah, so it's sad. But you move on because you have to, because it's an urgent thing. And it takes us to the next chapter. So I think, if I remember, you go back to the river and you find a boat, and that's kind of how you get out of there. And you're on this boat going to, I forgot to say, Lucas says that you need to go to the, how do you say it? The Chateau.
Shit. Oh, I have it written down.
I don't know how to say it because it's French. It's like the Chateau d'Ambrage. That sounded pretty French, didn't it?
It sounded pretty good.
Are you French, Paul?
Yeah. Oui, oui.
Oh.
So Lucas knows where this place is, and he's leading you there. There's an aqueduct that he knows about that leads to the castle, so that's what you're doing in the next chapter, chapter 5, The Raven Spoils. And you get off your boat because you see the aqueduct, and you're trying to you're following the aqueduct, and there's this battlefield where the French army and the English army have fought, and there's just corpses everywhere because it's the aftermath of the battle. And now there's piles of corpses instead of piles of pigs that are kind of boxing you in.
Yep.
So you have to follow that path. And there's a bunch, not a bunch, but there's a few looters who are taking stuff off the corpses, and then there's some soldiers who are trying to bury and burn their fallen comrades' bodies so they don't get eaten by rats.
What I will say is one of the mechanics I loved during this game was there'd be a soldier who was holding a lantern,
Yeah.
and you'd throw a rock at their lantern, put the light out, and then they get eaten by rats. I loved that. I loved how the concept of you must stay in the light transcended to the NPCs that you're trying to get past as well.
Yeah.
You could kill NPCs by extinguishing their light as well. I thought that was a really cool mechanic for the game.
Yeah, it's kind of, like Jay was saying earlier, it kind of builds the puzzle that you have to do for the stealth gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. I alluded to it earlier, but the jarring imagery in this game, being just confronted with thousands of dead bodies, having part of the puzzle be you opening up parts of a siege tower and thousands of dead bodies fall
Falling
out
out.
of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, something we would never see in today's warfare setting of just massive people all dying in the same location, right?
Yeah.
You add to that, there's a war going on during a plague, and all the dead bodies, multiplying these rats, and it just adds to the hopelessness of your journey.
Mm-hmm.
And going through it, now you have two little helpless guys you have to lead and do everything for. But you know, I thought this section was good. The puzzles were good. The stealth puzzles were good. They added in there'd be these crates of armors you could throw a thing at and it'd make a noise. And really, I thought it was well done. Again, the stealth gameplay shined through,
It did, for sure.
especially in this chapter.
Yeah, because it's dark and you have all these soldiers around and you have to stealth through while also staying within the confines of staying in the light and not allowing rats to eat you if you're
Yeah.
outside the light. So I agree. I thought the stealth portion at this section was really well done.
Yeah, and it introduces the mechanic of having your companions, like you have Lucas hold down this swaying lamp. There's just a brazier that's on a chain and it's swaying back and forth.
And it has like a burning brazier at the end.
Yeah, so you can follow it. And you can have Lucas hold it.
Yeah, and I like that. There's a lot of games that try to do this where you tell an NPC to go do something, and then in other games I get frustrated when they don't do what I tell them to do.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, I never had that where I tell Hugo to go hold something, you would do it, right? And so that just speaks to the polish of the gameplay in this section.
Yeah. So the chapter wraps up, like you sneak past all the soldiers and you're making your way past the battlefield, and you come across these two looters who have been like stopped by a soldier. And as you're kind of like walking in the background, the soldier's got his back to you, but they can see you. They're like, "Hey, what about them?" And the soldier turns around and they run. Lucas runs, but because you have Hugo, the soldier like captures you and him. And that's how the chapter ends. Like you're taken captive by these soldiers. And you're like, what's gonna happen next? And we're gonna take another break.
Alright, we'll be back after this.
Alright. Chapter 6, Damaged Goods. So the chapter begins, Amicia wakes up and she's in a cage in the soldiers' camps. And Hugo's not on screen, you're solo. And it's like you're in the cage and all of a sudden one of the looters who kind of used you as a distraction to get away shows up and lockpicks the cage and lets Amicia out and tells her that she's going to help her find and rescue Hugo. And she introduces herself. Her name is Millie. I think I'm saying that right.
Seems good to me.
So Millie and I think it's Mellie and Amicia sneak through the camp, avoiding the soldiers. It's a lot of the mechanics we talked about earlier. We were throwing rocks to distract them, and Mellie is just super stealthy. You don't have to worry about her like you do with Hugo. And you eventually find Hugo's cage, and you've gotta it's like hanging in the air. So you've got to take your sling and you've gotta knock it down, and then Mellie picks the lock. And you kind of overhear that these are English soldiers who've captured you, and they recognize the family crest on your clothing, and they want to ransom you because they've just been executing all the other looters that they've found to this point. So that's why you're still alive. And while you're trying to sneak out with Hugo, Lord Nicholas from the Inquisition arrives to pay the ransom, and it's discovered that you've escaped. So the camp is all in alarm and everybody's looking for you. And Mellie's brother, who was the other looter from earlier, is like setting off these explosive barrels to cause distractions and allowing you to sneak past large groups of soldiers. What do you guys think about sneaking through the camp?
I like the camp because I felt like it was a good transition into incorporating attacking into stealth. This was like the first level where instead of just stealthing past everybody, I'm also strategically killing off this guard, sneaking past this guard. I don't think I'll get past this guard, kill this guy. Like, because I do feel like as the game goes on, it goes from a stealth game to a game where you're fighting most people. I feel like this was a good, it's a good leveling up of fighting from stealth to you're gonna be fighting more into the later levels of the game.
And I think they introduced some new enemies. So now there's just the basic enemies who don't wear any metal armor. You can just snipe their head with your sling and kill them. And now there's some armored enemies who you have to sneak past at this point in the game.
Yeah, I like this section. It was action packed. When you're first found, you immediately feel the loss of Hugo's presence. Not having him there was tangible compared to before when you're always worried about him. And it introduces Melee or Millie well, and kind of what she's all about and how she's kind of a badass and can pick locks and
Any lock.
yeah. So her and Arthur make their debut, and I thought it was a good sequence of areas that you go through.
How about the tent where there's a chest, and Mellie's like, I can pick that if you want, or we can keep going. I'm like, who would just keep going? Pick that lock. I want to let me get the shit in there.
This was
Speedrunners.
This is a level 2 where you could pick different paths to sneak through. So I died on one, and then I went a different way a few times. So it was interesting to have choices, because I think, maybe I'm wrong, but up to this point it was pretty linear, the path you had to take to sneak through these enemies.
I like the oh shit moments where you get found and you have to kill like 4 people.
Yeah. And like how difficult it is when a guy's like running at you. They see you, they start running at you, and you're like trying to lock on. You're like, come on, lock on, sling, lock on. And like you'll lock on your throw, but because he was running at like an angle, you miss, and then you're dead. And it's like, oh crap, I gotta wait till he's running straight on, or else I'm gonna miss. Yeah. Amicia!
So, you get out, like, Nicholas comes, like I said, and he's mad because he's like, why am I gonna pay a ransom if I have to catch these kids? So there's like some conflict there, and Arthur detonates like a large explosion, and it's really confusing, and you're able to get out through this hatch, but Arthur's fate is unknown at the end of the chapter.
Yeah, you, Melee, and Hugo escape. You don't know where Lucas is, right? And Arthur, you kind of think he made a noble sacrifice, and you all got out, and you don't think he did.
Which sucks too, because you know that Arthur has no like allegiance to you.
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of like Melly she just like helped you get out, and for her to lose her brother is like, well, shit. I mean, this was not worth it for you at all.
Yeah. And then the next chapter, chapter 7, The Path Before Us, Melly takes you and Hugo to their hideout, and you kind of learn that Lucas told them you were noble and they'd be paid for helping you to escape. And then Amicia tells her, like, oh, we don't really actually have any money. And she's kind of like, what? But then she just accepts it, like, oh, okay, well, I'm a good person, so I'm still gonna help you. So you get to their hideout, and Hugo like has an episode with his illness where he gets like a headache, and he just goes like, oh, my head, and Amicia holds him tight and says, it's okay, Hugo, and he feels better. I think you carry him too a little bit, but you rest at their hideout, and you're awakened by the sound of Inquisition soldiers around kind of looking for you, and you hide out. Like, you get out of the hideout through this like back entrance, and you sneak toward where Lucas is. You're reunited with Lucas and escape the soldiers, and you reach the Chateau d'Ambrage after solving a few puzzles. There's these braziers there's these levers that you can activate to move the flaming braziers, and it like makes a path through the rats. And it's kind of like a defense mechanism against them too. It like forces the rats into these pits. So they introduced that mechanic, like that kind of puzzle. You get to the Chateau d'Ambroge, and you kind of set that up as your new home base.
Yeah, going from here,
It's a pretty short chapter. Chapter.
It was a pretty short chapter. I really liked the establishment of like a home base. I enjoy that in games where you have like a home where you know that's where you're safe at and that's where you can go to. I also really liked that puzzle. I liked if you look down into that pit where you forced all the rats into, it's like the definition of a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
You look down there and it's just pitch black and just rats at the bottom, and you just have to force before you're able to go to the home base and get into the tower where you are safe. You have to go in and just move like 3 levels of rats all into this pit, so that it's rat free and you're free and you're home. So I liked that puzzle. I thought that was one of the better puzzles in the game, and I liked the establishment of home.
Yeah.
Because that's why I called it like the whole time I'm going through, and I think maybe the next chapter is called Our Home too. But even before that, I just had it labeled in all my notes as this is home. You know, this is home base, is where we are at.
I liked seeing the area where Melee and Arthur lived. It was cool to see their little base there, and you know, like that environment down there where they've been hiding out is, you know, worth 1,000 words. Like you can see how they've been living for the past how long.
Hidden straw beds, like
yeah. It's a contrast to Hugo and Amicia, who are nobility and they've lived like a very cozy life, and Arthur and Melly, like their parents aren't around, they've kind of had to resort to thievery to survive, but they're also good people.
Yeah, and when they get forced out of there, then you really start to feel bad for Millie, because she lost her brother and now she lost her home, right?
Yeah.
Because of you. So I like this little section, and I thought it was a needed break from the constant
Action.
Rats and people action.
Yeah. So it kind of leads into the next chapter. It is chapter 8, Our Home. So the group has established like their camp in the ruins of the Chateau d'Ambroge. And the Chateau d'Ambroge is in ruins and disrepair. There's broken down walls, and not all of the castle is habitable. So they find like a tower, which is pretty good, and there's an old alchemist lab, and Lucas is playing around and is doing research trying to figure out the cure for whatever is going on with Hugo. And there's a lot of relationship building. You talk to Melly and you learn more about her and Arthur, and there's more of like the contrast between Amicia and her, because they're the same age, they're from very different backgrounds. And Lucas kind of explains more about what's going on with Hugo. So his condition is called the prima macula, and it's getting worse, and he's approaching what Lucas calls the first threshold. And he recalls that Laurentius was basing his research and his work on the cure on a book, this like forbidden book called the Sanguinis Itinera. And he doesn't have that book because it's this forbidden book, and it has like a bunch of dangerous, well, the church would deem it dangerous content, and it's hidden away in the university basement of Bashkin, this nearby town. And at the end of the chapter, it's very short. It's really just kind of character building, world building. Amicia and Melly decide to go to Bashkin. Melly's going to try to free Arthur, and Amicia is going to look for the book. Not a whole lot of gameplay in this chapter.
Yeah, really not much more to say about it.
Yeah. just kind of get the plan of what's next. Kind of gives you your next objective now that you've reached the Chateau d'Ambrose. So, Chapter 9, In the Shadow of the Ramparts. Melly and Amicia sneak into Bastion. Hugo's not with you. He's back at the castle with Lucas. And you split up. Melly gets to go look for Arthur. And you're trying to get to the university as Amicia. It's kind of similar. You're sneaking through the city, not really running, not as frantic as the first town that you come across. There's a bunch of soldiers, different enemy types. I don't think I mentioned it, but earlier in one of the chapters, I think when you're in Melly and Arthur's hideout, she teaches you the recipe for, what's the name of it? Devanterus, which is like, I forget the ingredients, but it's like an acid that you can throw at enemies with helmets on, and it like burns their face, so they take their helmets off and then expose their heads, and you can use your sling to take them down. Also, the Inquisition has a heavy presence in Bastion, and there's piles of corpses because they've been executing anyone who's suspected of being infected or out after the curfew. So there's a lot of like, you run into people who are residents of the town, and they're just like frantically trying to get their stuff out because they're afraid of the Inquisition. And by the end of the chapter, you've made it to the university and you're about to go in.
Yeah, I thought this section of sneaking through Bastion was my favorite stealth section as Amicia. I thought the atmosphere, like there were sections where you would see a resident of the town, and they'd be confronted by guards, and you have to sneak past, and I'm like looking through the gates, trying to figure out, can I help this person? I'm not sure if I can, and eventually I would give up and just continue on because really, your mission's to help Hugo. You're on your own, and you can't help everybody. I thought the sections with like the large metal structures with hundreds of bodies hanging, and you have to like knock one of those bodies down and go through underneath with the rats going around eating that body. I thought like,
oh yeah,
this section was, if this was a horror game, this would be the level that like defined it, you know, like the atmosphere in this town, the environment, everything about it, like this was crazy compared to the rest of it. Like, and we went through a lot of unsettling sections with the pigs and the battlefield, but this blew it out of the water when it came to unsettling for me, because this town and how the Inquisition was just tearing it apart and just having brutal displays all over, I thought was very interesting. The other point I had was this area may have been linear, but the way that it was set up felt like there may have been other paths that you could have taken. I think it like after I got through the whole thing, I think it probably was linear, but there were sections that I didn't explore because I was just trying to make my way to the university and didn't go down different alleys that were available to me, because again, like, that sense of urgency wasn't there, but the sense of I need to get there, I need to stay stealthy, and I'm not going to go down paths that I don't need to go down was there. Yeah. Especially with the environment and how it was.
I did explore down some of those alleys, and there were, like, you could go down and there'd be like an alchemist cart, and you could go in there and it'd have a bunch of crafting materials that you could use. So I found at least one of those, and that was cool because then I felt kind of rich on materials, kind of rewarded my exploration. And I hadn't been really exploring a whole lot because I wasn't looking for collectibles. But you're right, there's not the urgency, you're not being chased, nobody knows you're there. So I did do more exploring in this chapter.
So I think this game, and Paul alluded to it earlier in the hot takes, it riffs off The Last of Us a lot. You know, you're a capable character leading around a younger, less capable character. And they also riffed off it in the crafting system, I thought.
Yeah.
Very similar crafting system. And as Paul said, there's a lot of these offshoots here where if you took the time to explore, you got rewarded for it. So I thought it was nice game design.
Yeah, and yeah, it was well done. I did think about The Last of Us a lot when I was going through. So you get to the university, and chapter 10 starts. The Way of the Roses.
Oh, sorry. Can I just interject one thing? Is getting to the university. I unlocked a achievement, a 5% achievement, which was go through the front doors.
Oh yeah, I saw that in the list, and I was like,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
I saw you got that and I didn't, and I was like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, there were other entrances?
You just killed a bunch of people on your way.
No, I just threw a pot and ran past the people and went in through the doors and they didn't chase me through.
There's a side door with like one guard you could headshot and walk through.
Because the front door, they had 2 armored guards.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, if I throw like the Dementius or whatever it's called, and I take out one, the other one's just gonna come get me before I can do it. So I just threw a pot out as far as I could and then just snuck around, just went in through the door. And the other one saw me before I got through the door, and I just went through and I was just like,
See you.
it can't follow me through this door, right?
Yeah, video game mechanics.
Yeah, that's funny because I saw the 2 guards in front of that door and I was like, okay, I'm not supposed to go through that door, so there must be another door I need to go through.
Okay, so you get to the university and you go inside and you see that the Inquisition is there. There's a bunch of Inquisition like scholars, and they've been ransacking the university, and you find out they're also looking for this book, the Sanguinis Eterna, and you discover that the Grand Inquisitor, the leader of the Order Vitalis, has arrived to help speed the search. And you're kind of sneaking above, and you see that they've captured this young blacksmith. And they're talking. You overhear this conversation, and his father like built the door to the basement of the university, and they can't open it. And they tortured this blacksmith to try to force him to open it. And rather than comply with the Inquisition, he chose to be tortured to death. So now they brought his son, Roderick, and he's their only option to try to get in. So you kind of see him being led away to this door, and Amicia follows him stealthily and reaches this door, and there's a few enemies guarding him, trying to get him to open the door. And I got stuck for a little bit on this part because I got to the door and I attacked like the guys with no helmets, but then there was this armored enemy, and I don't think my acid consumable was working on him.
No.
And I'm trying to figure out, like, man,
Because he was the first heavy armor. I died to him a couple times too.
And finally, after a while, I realized there's this chandelier hanging. You throw a rock at it, it breaks the chain, and it falls on him.
Yep.
So that was kind of interesting. You think you play a game and you think like, oh man, what I've been taught isn't working. I don't know what else to do. And then you finally see like, oh, there's this other option besides throwing a rock at his head.
Yeah, exactly. Because in this section, they didn't introduce the heavy armored guy.
Mm-hmm.
You just went in and you tried to attack him in the way you've been attacking like the light armored guys, and it's not working. You're like, what's going on? Why can't I do what I've been doing? You have to figure out like, oh, for heavy armored, you need to get creative.
Yeah, and I'm just running around dodging, and I'm like, man, I don't know how to beat this guy, and I'm wasting all my stones. And then like I went to go lock on him, and I missed, and it locked on the chandelier, and I dropped it, but he wasn't under it, so it didn't work, and I died. Then I went back, and I'm like, okay, I just need to drop that on him before he aggroes on me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I did it once, died, and then saw the chandelier and did it again. But I don't think we touched on it. The way Roderick was talking shit back to the Inquisition instantly became my favorite character in the game.
Same.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, man, why is Roderick not the main character? Why is dumbass Hugo the main character?
Yeah, Roderick was cool.
Yeah, he's a badass.
And the other thing that we didn't touch on when we just passed was the introduction of the High Inquisitor. How, like, again, they introduced him in like a way to make him obviously a bad guy, but they did it in such a nasty way that fit the game so well
Yeah.
with like bodies of presumably alive people like chained to like walls and extracting their fluids of some kind
Their
and
blood.
their blood, injecting it into his arms
Yeah.
with these massive needles. Like it obviously when they introduce him, they want to introduce him where he's like definitely this is a bad guy and he's the worst of the worst, but it fit the game really well to be like doing it in such a nasty way too, you know, like
Yeah, because he has the plague and he needs blood transfusions to treat it, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, to slow the spread of the disease. He's just taking other people's blood, which is why he wants to get his hands on Hugo.
Right.
So you defeat the guards by Roderick, and now all the other guards hear that big chandelier fall. So you're like, oh man, open the door, Roderick. So he does. He opens it up, and him and Amicia flee into the university's basement in search of the book. So it's kind of like a maze down there a little bit. I took a few wrong turns, and I eventually figured out, like, okay, this is the right way down. And you enter this room and lock the door behind you to slow them down. And now there's this puzzle where there's these levers that you need to command Roderick to operate, so you're able to kind of platform up to where the book is because it's up high. And you have to like push a cart to jump on it and be able to get up, and it was pretty good. Like you said earlier, Jay, Roderick kind of, it works well when you command the NPCs.
Yeah, it was a very Last of Us type puzzle.
Yeah.
Push a box, climb up it, climb onto something else, have the other person do something so you could go on to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought it was a strong puzzle, and took me a little bit to figure it out, so it wasn't too easy. And
Yeah. A lot of different things to have Roderick do to make it work.
you have to do it in the correct order or else it wouldn't.
So you get the book, you get the Sanguinis Interna, and as you pick it up, the Grand Inquisitor and his soldiers break through the door that had been locked, and they taunt you, but you're able to escape through this hatch and get out of the university and get out of the city. But when the Grand Inquisitor is taunting you, he reveals that the Inquisition has been watching the Durin family for a long time, and they've just been waiting for the Premier Macula to wake up within Hugo's blood.
Couldn't it have been in any of their blood?
Yes, but it's only
Just waiting till it wakes up in somebody.
it was only active in Hugo's blood. That was the cause of his illness too. So like somehow like a fire breaks out and the whole area is on fire, and it's climactic. It's back to that intense pattern where you're just running through houses that are on fire, and there's this one sequence where one of the like churches or cathedral is engulfed in flames, and these soldiers are running out, and you have to sneak through them, and there's this one like armored enemy, like the heavy armored guy, and you learn that Roderick, being the badass that he is, you can just command Roderick to just tackle him to the ground, and then he just like stabs him and kills him.
I thought he like snapped their neck. He like,
Oh yeah, right. The noise when he does
Roderick's
it.
a badass.
Yeah.
it's
So
just a thick boy who runs up and
Takes people out.
I like the
Takes out the-
dialogue options a lot that he would say when he did it too. This might get messy.
great one-liners. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So you run. Eventually, you go into that burning building where everybody's running out of, and it's chaotic and it's gorgeous, the imagery and all that stuff, the fire, everything. And Roderick like breaks down a flaming door just by like throwing his shoulder against it a few times.
Yeah, he must have like he must be very dense, is what I got. He's just like
The blacksmith's boy.
He's
a
the blacksmith's son.
400-pound, 4-foot boy
Yeah.
running through shit.
Yeah, because he's probably the same age as Amicia too. He's probably like 15, 16, like
Yeah.
just taking shit out. He's thick.
Yeah, so you get out of the blazing building and you escaped and it fades to black. So it was that was probably one of my favorite chapters, The Way of the Roses.
Stakes were high. Seems like you're hitting one of the climaxes of the game.
Yeah.
And you finally got the book, so yeah, I thought it was good.
That's kind of what I like too when you just play as Amicia. It's like you take the training wheels off. You don't have to worry about Hugo.
Yeah. I also like how these chapters are all kind of bite-sized, right? They're not extraordinarily long. You can get through them pretty quick, and I liked how the game was paced that way, where it's not long, drawn out, making you do the same shit over and over again.
Sure.
Sections.
And the level designs are pretty good too, where they place enemies, like where the paths are. It opens up a little bit. You've got different ways you can approach things. You can just be a cold-hearted killer, and you can kill everybody. It didn't feel...
But it takes resources to kill everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, there's a trade-off there, too.
It rewards stealth. Because then
For sure.
you can use those rare consumables to upgrade your sling or upgrade your pouches. But I like that it suits anybody's playstyle. Like, there's a way to play the game.
Yeah, and I really liked, like, I got curious early how many chapters there were going to be. I looked it up in like 17 chapters. Oh my god. But I liked how they're only 20 to 30 minutes long. So, like, you had obvious spots where you could stop, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like, I want to stop, but there's another hour of this mission that I have to do, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
if I want to go to bed, I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah.
It didn't overstay its welcome, right? It got in, it presented what it needed to present, and it didn't feel like any filler.
Yeah.
And that's what I hate the most in games, just doing shit just to do it.
Yeah.
Yep. So the next chapter, chapter 11, Live. Amicia and Roderick return to the castle, and they give Lucas the Sanguinis Interna, and he starts reading it, researching it, and there's a time skip as he needs time to digest it and figure out what they need to do next. And when you pass that, now there's like snow on the ground because it's getting to be winter time, and there's a little bit of like conversations with Roderick, and you kind of learn a little bit more about him and bond with him, and it kind of solidified, like you guys said, like Roderick was a badass in the chapter when you meet him, and then you get to know more about him. He says more than one-liners, and he's a pretty cool dude. Melly and Arthur didn't come back with you, but they arrive after this time skip, and you meet Arthur for the first time, and he tells, like, they came to the castle to tell everyone that they overheard guards taking a female prisoner, and they said that her name was Beatrice de Rune. So it's revealed that Beatrice didn't die at the beginning of the game. She's been alive this whole time. So the group discusses this without Hugo. Hugo is upstairs sleeping because his condition has been getting worse this whole time. And Amicia says that they shouldn't tell Hugo about this because it'll make things worse. But we see that Hugo is like up the stairs and he's eavesdropping on them. So now he knows that Beatrice is alive.
Yeah. It has to be said, the second that I saw a sword go through the door and there was blood on it, I knew that they made it that way because I knew the mom was still going to be alive. I knew it was the gardener that got stabbed and not the mom. Because
I thought it was Beatrice.
Yeah, I 100% thought she was dead.
Really?
When they killed the dad, I was just like, okay, the mom's dead too.
Yeah, 100%. I thought, no way. I didn't think anything other than that. I forgot the gardener was on the other side of the door, too. I
Well,
was just like, oh, she's dead.
well, yeah, there was two people on the other side of the door, and they made it ambiguous on who got stabbed. So I was like, okay, so we're gonna meet up with the mom
But
later on.
Amicia said Beatrice was dead. That means Beatrice is dead.
You fell into their trap, yeah.
I fell in.
You got me. I just figured they killed them both.
I mean, same, right? But
So
obviously not.
they're building towards the finale now at this point. Like, we know there's going to be some kind of confrontation with the Grand Inquisitor, and in chapter 12, All That Remains, Lucas and Amicia decide they need to go back to the Darun estate because the alchemy lab at the Chateau d'Ambrose isn't adequate for creating this elixir that Lucas has learned about in that forbidden book. So you're on the road back to the Darun estate, and Jay, you touched on this earlier, this thing where they'll create this cozy environment, and then some kind of tragedy happens, and now you're going to return to it.
Yeah, it was cool going back to your original home and seeing how fucked up it's gotten since you left. Returning to Hugo's bedroom and seeing how overrun it is with rats and having to deal with
Well, that's the thing, though,
enemies
not
being
Hugo's bedroom.
Yeah, everywhere except Hugo's bedroom.
Which was like the thing that made it like interesting. The thing that made it like strange was like everything's overrun. There's nests all through the castle everywhere except Hugo's wing. Hugo's wing is untouched completely.
The other thing too is your father, Robert Darun's body is also untouched. Like the rats haven't gotten to it.
And the servants' bodies were untouched too, weren't they?
I don't remember about the servants, but what I do remember is all of a sudden shit goes bad, and there's like the rumbling, and all these rats come out, and like one of them is on Robert's body, and it's the first rat twister.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all. To be completely honest, I
What
didn't
don't
understand.
you get about rat tornadoes?
Yeah,
I can understand like the Prima Macula might be like getting stronger in Hugo, so rat tornadoes are happening now. What I don't understand is your father's body is untouched, and then when you show up, the second you show up, now it's getting pulled underground.
I think it's like a cataclysm because you're a member of the Darun family. It's like a response to the Darun family curse. But I don't know.
But now, because now you're here,
because
it's happening.
Amicia is there, even though the curse is dormant in her blood, it's still present. I think that's just what I thought.
Like it's super present in Hugo's blood, and they won't kill him. And if it's present in your blood and your dad's blood, and they don't touch Robert Darun's body until you get there. Like, I don't understand why they don't touch his body until you get there. I didn't follow. I didn't follow.
Yeah, I think it's
There's
just
probably some reason other than to make it dramatic, but maybe it's just to make it dramatic. To me, when I was playing the game, I'm like, I don't get it.
Any thoughts, Jay?
No, I didn't really think about that when it happened. I was just like, oh shit, the rat tornado. And,
Yeah.
and those ended up becoming, one of the more difficult things to deal with.
Right.
Especially when you're moving shit later on.
Because
and you
like
have
when
rat tornadoes coming at you.
You'd have to like throw Ignifer at the rat tornadoes, and now, but because it takes a second and a half of standing still, now the rats catch up to you, and now you're dead.
Yeah.
Getting eaten alive. It's like, well, shit. I guess I gotta be in front of the brazier before I throw the Ignifer. I'm gonna get eaten by rats.
Yeah, it was just another thing I think they added to increase the difficulty because these rat tornadoes can pass through lit areas.
Yeah.
So you have to get past all these rats, and you go to a Roman bathhouse that Amicia used to play in when she was little, but she wasn't really allowed in as she got older, and she suspects this is where Beatrice's lab is hidden. And there's a puzzle you have to solve in order to open the hidden entrance. And one thing I thought that was interesting about this part was there's these murals on the wall that show more history of the Darun family curse. And you see like this Roman mural where it's like Justinian is emperor, and there's another part like it shows that like there's another Prima Macula person who had these power over the rats, and you assume that's like Hugo's ancestor. So it was a little bit of history and world building.
So one thing that did happen in the bathhouse, which I didn't experiment with, but thought about it afterwards. So you went through the bathhouse to figure out the code for which statue to pull on to open up the
secret entrance.
The secret entrance. What if you just went around to each secret entrance and pulled on each one? Like, why not? Why wouldn't it just open?
That's a good question, because you had to find the right one.
Yeah, but if you pull on the rhino and the rhino, oh, that's not it. pull on the antelope. That's not it. Pull on the lion. Oh, that was the right one. Like, doesn't seem like much of a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's gamified, right? But
It's a game.
yeah, I can't think too much about it. I pulled on the rhino, if that was the first one, and
I don't
nothing
remember what
happened.
they were.
And then I was like, well, I guess I gotta solve the puzzle.
Like, if you
So,
pulled on the line without solving the puzzle, would it have opened? I don't know.
yeah, because I died, I just like ran straight to the line and opened it.
So you open the secret entrance, and Lucas in Beatrice's lab is able to complete the elixir now that he has all the equipment and the ingredients that he needs. But there's rats that pour down there, and there's rat tornadoes that you have to defend him from while he's completing the elixir. And you do that, and he finishes the elixir, and now all the rats that are in there are pacified now that the elixir is complete, and you can just walk out.
I thought it was a good fight sequence.
Yeah.
I thought it was like having to defend Lucas, like they're all going toward Lucas. You have to defend him. I thought it was a good sequence for sure. Like you're in the center of the room and you have to watch 360 degrees.
You have to move the
braziers to save, like keep him safe, and then the rat tornadoes are heading toward him the whole time.
and so you can go use other stations. And then,
Yeah, you can move up right. Yeah, it was pretty well done, I thought too. So you return to the Chateau d'Ambrose and you give Hugo the elixir, and it's supposed to make him better. He drinks it, and you're hoping that okay, this is gonna make Hugo's condition improve. And that's the end of the chapter. Chapter 13.
You wake up and Hugo's a bitch.
Penance. Amicia awakens and realizes that Hugo isn't there. So she runs out to search for him, and she like falls down this ravine and hits her head and gets knocked out, and she has all these like hallucinative dreams where you see a bunch of previous areas of the game, and like Clovia's in one of them, and she's like, children don't run away without a reason, and Hugo's in them, and you know, it's Amicia feeling guilty about keeping the fact that Beatrice is alive from him. And it seems like she comes to, and she hears Hugo wailing, Amicia! And he's being assailed by Inquisition guards. So she runs in, kills the guards with her sling. And you know, she's talking with Hugo, and he's like, we have to go find Mummy. And she's like, no, Hugo, Mummy is dead. So she keeps the lie alive. And he runs off because he hears, like, it sounds like a woman is like in pain. He's like, Mummy! And then Amicia chases after him, and she's like transported to what area was it? Back on their house, I think. And Hugo's there, and he's just angry with her for keeping the news of his mother, keeping the fact that their mother is alive from him. And it seems like the whole thing is unclear if like any of it really happened. Did she just hit her head and pass out? Did she really save Hugo from those guards? It wasn't clear to me. Like, was that all just a dream?
I think it's made to be that way though. Like, I got the same exact vibe. Like, I don't know if any of it was real. And honestly, judging from the next chapter, maybe it wasn't, right? Like, other than Hugo being gone.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah, I mean, everything was going really well. And then Hugo had to go and fuck it all up.
This is
So.
where I got the Harry Potter vibes. The kid with the powers is just fucking shit up. Just let people help you, you piece of shit.
Yeah. So the
But
next,
he's 5, so
he's 5.
he's
5.
so he's 5, so everything it's fine. But they should have chained him to a bed apparently, so that he wouldn't mess everything up.
I bet you loved the next chapter then, John. Chapter 14, Blood Ties. So now you're playing as Hugo.
I did love the next chapter actually. I loved the scaling of everything. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, so Hugo's been captured by the Inquisition, and he's in their headquarters back in Bastion. And he's in a cell, and they're drawing his blood to give to the Grand Inquisitor, and he just wants to see Beatrice. And the person drawing his blood is like, that's not up to me, that's up to the Grand Inquisitor. So he's upset, and he sees like a rat in his cell, go into this cabinet and like crawl out, and you crawl in there as Hugo, and oh, there's an opening in the back that you crawl through. And now you're just sneaking through the castle as Hugo, crawling through these small spaces, looking for Beatrice. And eventually you see Lord Nicholas, who's like yelling about, I'm gonna go check on Beatrice. Don't follow me. So you follow him, and he eventually leads you to Beatrice's cell, and you're reunited with her.
So if I can pause you for a minute, we built up all this power as Amicia, and over the course of the game we crafted new weapons, and like I started to feel really capable of, as Amicia, I can take on any situation they throw at me. And then boom, you're Hugo with no powers at all, no equipment, nothing. You're forced to stealth through this section. And it was kind of jarring to me to go from really powerful character to character with nothing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was my favorite level of the game, for sure. Just this, and like I said earlier, I said the going through the city of Bastion was my favorite stealth section as Amicia. This is my favorite stealth section, period.
This was the toughest.
It was the toughest, and the scaling of you being, a 5-year-old, tiny human being, and you can just go into any section. You're hiding behind books. You're going under tables. You're like, I thought it was really, really cool to be able to, you're a quarter of the size of the people that are looking for you. I really liked it. I thought it was it was actually a difficult section of the game for a game that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I don't know, if nothing else, like, this section could have been on a lollipop Fortnite section where you're in lollipop land and you're a quarter of the size. I just loved that idea, like, and then to add in like the full story adding up to it, and the environment of this game to it, I thought like just took it to another level. I really liked this section. This level was.
And there's a sequence where you sneak past these cages with white rats, and it's the first time you see these rats that look different from the other rats in the game, and it's like, whoa, what's going on with these? They're in cages, and like they're being fed the blood of like these people.
Yeah, I will say this is the only stealth section where I felt there was one unfair part where you had to sneak past one I guess priest or drunk or whatever it was, where it was blind. Like, you had just a hope that he wasn't there. But other than that, like, I didn't care though. Like, whatever. I lost on that one guy like 4 times. So I'm like, whatever. I get to do the section previous to it where I'm sneaking through as this 2-foot character again. I enjoyed it. I was like, I want to play it again. I don't care. I'll play it this section as many times as it takes.
What do you guys think of the lamps?
I didn't use them as much as I think the game intended me to. Because I know you could, like, there were these lamps that they introduced earlier in the game where you could, like, turn them and have them, make an area safe.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I only used them when I had to. I didn't use them to, like, explore other areas or anything.
Yeah, I just light up the section I'm going to and just go through it.
Yeah, me trying to find all the collectibles. I use those in all kinds of crazy angles to try to get to, and I died a lot because I would walk into rats. But I thought it was cool adding depth to, and they introduced lamps a couple of chapters previous as Amicia.
Yeah.
As Amicia in like the upstairs of the attic of that one building.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So the chapter wraps up. You freed Beatrice from her cell, and you're trying to sneak out, and you come into this big cathedral, and Vitalis is there, and he traps you in there, and you realize that it was all set up by him to have Hugo find his mom, and there's all these rats around, and he sends soldiers at you, and while escaping with Beatrice, she helps him gain his ability, unlock his power. He can command rats to do what he wants, move them where he wants to go. So Hugo uses his power to make the rats attack the soldiers that are coming at him and Beatrice in order to save them. And it's another moment like earlier in the game when Amicia killed that first soldier where Hugo is now forced to kill these soldiers to protect his mother, and it's mentally exhausting for him and physically exhausting for him to use this power. And after a while of doing that, he collapses, and Beatrice is taken away by soldiers, and it's kind of a gut punch to realize like, oh, this was all part of a trap set by Vitalis.
Did you guys see the power that Hugo was going to have coming as I can control rats?
No.
Me neither. I thought it was like, initially I thought it was dumb. I was like, oh, that's what this whole thing was? But I guess it makes sense in the theme of the thing and it being the plague and whatnot, but I don't know. I never thought he was actually going to have like a superpower, you know what I mean? But I don't know if he's going to have a superpower. I guess thematically it makes sense as control rats, I guess.
I thought it was badass. I was like, finally, these things that have been the enemy the whole time I can use.
Yeah.
I thought it was fitting.
I can agree with that. Like they were an obstacle and now they're on your side. I can see that.
Yeah, I thought it was fitting. I guess I disagree with you, John. I thought it was cool to see him control the rats, and it kind of, I thought made sense with the story because you always knew, especially when you made the elixir in the previous chapter, like you know that these rats are somehow linked to whatever's going on with Hugo.
Yeah, I guess I never put that together, right? Because since they went like full passive mode on you with the elixir, which I didn't really understand either. Like, are the rats are conscious that this elixir is the cure, and if they were conscious that that's the cure, wouldn't they attack you harder?
Yeah, I'm not sure on their sentience, but I don't know.
I guess.
So, chapter 15 starts off, you're back in the castle as Amicia, and like the group is in disarray about what to do next. Arthur is trying to convince Melly that they should leave because now that Hugo's gone, what's the point? The Inquisition is going to come to the castle, and their defenses are not going to stop them. So you're wondering, like, oh man, what's going to happen? Is the group going to break up? And then one night, more rats than have ever attack. And those bottomless pits are filled with rats. They're overflowing, so your defenses at the Chateau d'Ambrose are no longer effective, and they overwhelm the castle, and the group is like, we have to get out of here. And you're trying to like move through this passage that Roderick discovered earlier to get out, and you run into Hugo and Lord Nicholas, and you realize that Hugo is the one controlling the rats and making them attack you. And you're fleeing them. It's like an intense, like, oh man, we gotta get out of here. And Nicholas captures Amicia, and he tells Hugo, all right, Hugo, kill her. Use your anger. But before Hugo can succumb to that, because he's kind of like brainwashed by the Inquisition by this point, Arthur knocks over this like tower or like wooden banister, and it falls on Lord Nicholas, and it seems like it takes him out.
I want to go back to the end of chapter 14 real quick.
Okay.
Because at the end of chapter 14 where they capture you,
Yep.
and you fall into like their plot, you have this fight where your mother is in the center of this circle. The High Inquisitor is up on these steps, and you're Hugo, and they're sending guards at you, and there's piles of rats around. You're using these rats, like you said, to keep killing these guards, and you realize while you're in the fight the High Inquisitor is sending these guards at you, and he's forcing you to kill these guards because they're going to kill your mother. But really what he's doing is he's feeding you kills, basically, to try to awaken the Prima Macula.
Yeah, trying to get you to cross the
And
first threshold.
Try to get you to cross the first threshold, exactly. And he's successful. And while this fight was like really strong and good, like it's a strong fight as Hugo for sure, and there's like a lot of enemies you gotta take out, and the level of difficulty is higher than most of the game. I felt like it kind of undid what you just did in the last three chapters. Last three chapters, you're sneaking around, you're getting this book, you're creating this cure, or to slow it down, and then the very next chapter, Hugo escapes and immediately crosses the threshold because the High Inquisitor forces it. It's like, I understand like the story behind it. I understand like and maybe this is why I don't like Hugo, because everything you did as Amicia, because Amicia is the character you play as the most. It's your character. Everything you just did in the last 3-4 chapters is undone by one thing. You know, it's like.
Yeah.
It sucks. I didn't appreciate it from Hugo.
Well, it's like what you said earlier. It's a Harry Potter situation. Like Hugo screws everything up.
Yeah.
So, Nicholas is on the ground. He's underneath this pile of rubble, and Hugo's still furious at Amicia for lying to him about their mother, and he's gonna send this horde of rats at her. And just as he does that, she like runs to him and embraces him, and the rats are piling on all of them. And she hugs him, and she says she's sorry. And they emerge from the pile of rats, and she's like broken the spell that the Inquisition had over him, and he's forgiven her now. But this distracts Arthur because he's watching all of this. Lord Nicholas gets up and impales him with his sword, and he's dead. It's devastating. And then you have to do a boss fight where you fight Nicholas.
What sucks about Arthur dying is, although Arthur was very much a minor character, I liked Arthur's. He wasn't as much as Melly, where he's just constantly okay with going along with Amicia and Hugo, right? He had some doubt.
Yeah, he's trying to get her to leave.
Which makes more sense than Melly's character, who is okay constantly with just completely being in it. Because like you take the archetype of like thieves, the idea typically with them is we're for ourselves, we're gonna survive on our own, we're not gonna care about anyone else. And that's kind of like who their characters were before meeting Amicia and Hugo. Yet Melly bonds with them and is completely willing to be like their sidekick, whereas Arthur always has this little bit of doubt where why are we here? We should be out of here. So I liked his character for that, like trying to pull her out of it, you know.
Yeah, but selfless act, and then he gets killed.
Yeah, and then exactly, and then his only selfless act he does for them.
Yeah,
I guess not only because he got himself captured at the camp as well.
makes you feel bad for him. I thought this boss fight was really cool.
Yeah.
Where you now have all of Amicia's abilities plus the abilities of Hugo, where you can command the rats, and you have to use them in conjunction to take down Nicholas.
Yeah, so there's all these braziers that are lit, and there's another consumable that I don't know the name of it, we didn't touch on it. There's a lot of consumables by this point in the game, but you can put lights out, and Nicholas is like using all these lit braziers to attack you, so the rats stay away from him. So you have to put out the braziers and get them to attack Nicholas, and after the rats get him once, he lights his sword on fire, and then you have to put his sword out before you can have the rats attack him. And then after you get him on that stage, now he lights all of his armor on fire, and you have to put that out before you can finally put him down.
I thought this fight was an opportunity missed
Really?
because I agree the idea of having Amicia and Hugo combine their powers was awesome and deserved a harder boss fight.
I thought this was like the first boss fight with the guy with the armor. You just gotta strip it off. It was like that, but now it's the real boss fight.
I thought you could have made it 4 times harder and it would still be within the realm of manageability. I thought because he walks so slow, you could just run away to the other side of the arena and do everything you need to do and not even have to worry about doing it in like you didn't
Yeah.
have to worry about like putting his sword out and then running and then having Hugo attack. You could just run to the side of the arena and then he gets close and you just run to the other side of the arena because he walked so slow. I thought, I don't know, it was just too easy. I thought the mechanics were really cool. I thought the fight itself was far too easy.
He drops aggro on you very fast. It's very easy to hide from him, but I think that's just the tone of the game. Like it's an extremely accessible game, so they didn't really want difficulty to be a thing with this game. I think.
Yeah, but for me, you're so deep into the game, whether you're going to beat this fight anyway. You're on the second to last chapter, basically.
Yeah.
So I would have liked some difficulty here. It was a baby fight.
What did you think, Jay?
I thought it was fine. I didn't die more than twice on it, so it was kind of easy, but I thought the tone of the game was going more for a story than for a difficult game, so...
Yeah.
And at this point, I was ready to knock this one out, be finished with it, so... I appreciated not getting hung up for an hour on one of the last bosses. So.
I mean, like a boss fight to me should be hard, though. Or at least a little bit hard. It shouldn't be... If he gets close to me, I'm just running to the other side of the arena, and now I have 45 seconds to figure out what I'm going to do because he walks at 1 mile an hour.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe a bit of a missed opportunity, but I thought it, like you said, Jay, I thought it fit the tone of the game. Any other thoughts on the Lord Nicholas boss fight?
Nope.
So, the next thing that happens is the group kind of gets back together and they mourn the loss of Arthur, and they're pissed off, they're sad, they're angry, and they plan an attack on the Inquisition headquarters, and that leads into chapter 16, Coronation, the final confrontation with the Grand Inquisitor. All right, so we're gonna get into it. The final chapter of the game, 16, Coronation. So after the group gets together and plans their assault on the Inquisition headquarters, you go, and you're what is it, 4 of you at this point? 5 of you. 4.
You,
Roderick,
Hugo, Roderick, Melly, and...
Amicia.
Is that it? And Amicia.
You
Wait,
said
I said
you.
you.
So 4.
Who was Melly with on the other side of that chasm?
Lucas.
Lucas.
So it's 5.
5.
All right, so the 5 of you go back to Bastion, sneak in, and you're trying to get back to the Inquisition headquarters where we played as Hugo earlier, and something happens where we get split up, and now it's just you, Hugo, and Roderick, and Melly and Lucas are away from you. I think they distract guards, and they run away, and you guys run a different way. And
Yeah.
you have to sneak through the town, and it's more of the same combat. It's fun to just run around with Roderick because you can just command him to take down heavy enemies, and you're powerful. Like my sling was almost fully upgraded at this point, and like a cool thing you can do is like when you wind it up, it stays wound up, and you can do multiple shots. I don't know if you guys did that upgrade for your
Never
sling.
unlocked that.
So it's really OP, especially when like multiple enemies are coming at you, because just snap to one, headshot. Snap to the guy behind him, headshot. So it's really satisfying.
Yeah, actually, I thought the fight sections in this part were the most difficult, which I like for the end of the game. Most amount of enemies in each area, and fun. Like, I thought the fight sections, and this is a note that I have, I like how the game transitioned from stealth to fighting toward the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even those fighting encounters in this area, I noticed were kind of puzzly too, because you had to work with the flow of the rats and take out this guy before that guy, and
Yeah.
it was satisfying that way.
You have all the tools too at this point. Like you have Hugo and his rat ability that you can command as Amicia. So you have all the stuff at your fingertips, and you can just decide how you want to approach every level, so to speak.
Us fighting a heavy in one of these sections, I think, where in the section where Melly and Lucas are on the other side, and you're up at the top of the fence or at the top of the stairs at the door of that burning building with Roderick. I couldn't remember how to kill the heavy, and I forgot that his weapon was on fire. I died like 7 times. Like I could not figure it out. I Googled it. I'm like, how do you kill heavies? Like I'm looking for a chandelier. I'm like, I'm outside. It's not gonna be a chandelier.
Oh, chandelier! Knock the sun down.
Yeah. But yeah, I forgot his weapon's on fire. I'm like, the rats don't kill him. Like nothing kills him.
Yeah. So eventually you come to a clearing, and on this ridge there's a bunch of archers, and there's no way to get across. But then you see this cart, and Roderick's like, "Here, help me push this cart. It'll block us so we can get to this gate, and on the other side of the gate is where Melly and Lucas are." So Roderick's like, "I'm gonna push this cart," and Amicia is like, "Here, I'll help you," and he's like, "No," and he pushes you away. "I got this." And so you're behind the cart, Roderick's pushing it. There's archers on the ridge shooting down at you, and there's foot soldiers running at you to attack you, and there's a lot of them that come at you, and you just gotta be on the sling, doming them. There's some guys with helmets. You have to use your acid attack to knock it off, and it's really intense. I failed it a couple times, but eventually you get to the other side. Roderick's been hit by a few arrows, and he's badly hurt, but he gets away from the cart, and nobody can lift up this gate, and Roderick's got like 4 arrows in him, and he's like, "Watch out." Stands, lifts up the gate. You and Hugo crawl under it to get to Melly and Lucas, and at that point Roderick collapses from his wounds.
Yeah, I also failed this part like 3 times because I could, like, obviously I think we all saw the writing on the wall as soon as Roderick's like, I'll be the one who pushes it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is my favorite support character. It's the best one. I don't want him to die, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like shooting the archers, like trying to kill archers, getting killed by the soldiers that are just running at me because I'm trying to take out enough archers. You can't take out enough archers. They just keep respawning.
Yeah.
So eventually I gave up on that and had to just let Roderick go.
Yeah, you're right. It was pretty clear there was going to be no way to save Roderick.
Yeah, it was sad to see him go, because then he just dies there on the other side of the gate, and you have to leave his body.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty heart-wrenching moment, especially for one of the top-tier characters in the game. But sad to see him go, but he had a badass death.
He
Should have
did.
been Hugo.
He did have a good death. Moment of silence for Roderick. Okay. So now we're at the Inquisition headquarters, and it's the confrontation with the Grand Inquisitor. So you're inside that same pit. Is it the same pit where Hugo was earlier?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so because it's a church.
Yeah,
Like,
you're right.
And I thought the scene where it's the 4 of you, Hugo, Melly, and Lucas walking down the center aisle of the church toward Vitalis with his army of white rats. I thought was a cool scene. Like, I think it was a cutscene, or maybe you controlled it, but either way, it's like badass just walking toward them like, we're gonna take you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a good cut scene, and I thought this was one of the stronger boss fights in the game.
Yeah, so the boss fight, Hugo is there and Vitalis is there, and he's got these hordes of the white rats that we saw earlier, and he is commanding them, and he's sending his white rats at you. Hugo's sending the black rats to fight his white rats, and it's like a stalemate. And you're trying to get close to him with Amicia while kind of having Hugo help you with his rats. And when you get close enough, you can take your sling out and you can just chuck a rock at Vitalis' head. And there's like these braziers where you can go to get away from the rats, and he's got rat tornadoes coming at you to try to take you out that you have to have Hugo send his rats at to knock the what do you call it? The rat tornadoes from Vitalis out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the rat pillars that he slammed down
Oh
were
yeah.
badass.
Yeah, I thought this was cool.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like a giant tower of rats.
Yeah.
You had to get out of the way. It was so cool. Not realistic. But
I don't know the
rat
what's it called?
tornadoes.
What's the plague? What's the virus called? The prima macula.
Yeah. Prima
I don't know.
macula.
Maybe it exists. Maybe you can put a
It's just
20
stack
tall
rats.
rats up.
Yeah.
As they're walking.
Yeah, that's what I love too. Is like they're never stationary. It's always just a ball of just moving rats. It's like whoa.
Yeah. They don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an epic fight. And I think it was a good culmination of
Mhm.
the entire game.
Yeah. You have to hit him what 3 times?
Yeah, he's got a stronger head than anybody else in the
Dude,
game.
I literally thought that. I'm like, this old plague infested dude. He's the one who can just take these rocks to the dome, but like the soldiers can't.
Yeah.
The heavy soldiers, they can't. They get one shot, but this
Yeah.
old dude just taking them like a champ.
Yep. Yep. Just the armor of having to be the final boss.
Final boss.
Yeah. But it was a good final boss fight. I didn't think it was that difficult. I think I took 2 or 3 attempts before I finally got it. It is a little hectic, the last one, because he's dropping rat towers on you constantly, and there's tornadoes they have to dodge, and
big, they come out of the ground. It's a big area that it eats up, so you have to like make sure you space out.
I like this kind of boss fight where you die a couple times, but each time you die, you learn a new pattern.
Yeah.
And then the last time you fight him, it's flawless.
Yeah.
You don't even get touched.
Because it's one hit kill. So
Yeah.
yeah. Melly and Lucas they're like helping Beatrice while you're fighting Vitalis, so that's why they're not present for this, I guess.
oh yeah, that's right. Beatrice was like in a cage when he showed up.
Mhm.
And, they
They're
went around
Completely
the side
forgot that.
while he was distracted and got her out.
Yeah. So I think honestly it was longest boss fight of the game, right?
I thought like Jay said, not like again, the game wasn't very difficult, but it was the most difficult boss fight, and it took all the mechanics. It was thematic with the whole game. I thought it was a good finish to the game for sure.
Yeah, comparing it with Cuphead, I think it was a more satisfying last boss than the devil.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I remember. It's also he's got rat tornadoes, and you have to throw. Oh, what is your fire attack? Ignifer, and you knock them down because Hugo's shooting like his own rat tornadoes at him, and that makes him vulnerable, so you can hit his head.
Right, that's right. Because if Hugo's rat tornadoes hit his rat tornadoes, they just dissipate.
Yeah.
So you don't do damage to him.
And there's a lot of rat tornadoes to take out, so Hugo can make him vulnerable for that last one. So it's tricky in the positioning, like you guys talked about.
Yeah, and I didn't notice there were braziers in front of Vitalis as well, so you had to put those out at the same time too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on, which I liked, and it made you use a lot of your abilities, and made you use Hugo as well, and like I said, just all around a good fight.
Yeah, and after you beat Vitalis, it's kind of bleak. Like it just kind of like Hugo, you've done it, but there's not a satisfaction for the characters. It felt like to me, they don't seem happy after they beat Vitalis. It's kind of like the realization of what it took to get here and the loss that they went through on the way. It all kind of hits and sets in. The anger from when Arthur died in Roderick, it all kind of hits, I think, and you feel it at that point.
Yeah.
The final scene, the final cutscene when Vitalis is on the ground dying, and Hugo is just staring him in the eye. I didn't know really what to make of it. Like, is Hugo, like, he still has the prima macula running through his veins.
Yeah.
And we know he's only crossed the first threshold, right? So if this is the first threshold, there's more thresholds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the the pointless chapter set up too. But
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. That cutscene ends and it goes straight
And then
to
credits.
credits.
Yep.
And so I beat this game first, and then I was waiting for Paul to finish it, and I knew, I just knew that Paul saw credits. He quit the game and turned off his Xbox.
Yep.
And so when he told me he beat it, I'm like, so did you see the after credits scene? And he's like, what after credits scene? And
Yeah.
so he had to boot it back up for the last scene the next day.
Yeah, so there's an epilogue chapter called For Each Other. And the next day I had to go back and play it. So in the epilogue, it cuts to Hugo and Amicia. They're at this town and they're buying supplies. And they're going to go back to meet Beatrice and Hugo. No, not Hugo. Lucas. And while they're walking through the town, there's a fair going on, and there's this mini game similar to the tutorial mission where you can use your sling to hit these targets, and you win an apple for Hugo, and it's really sweet. And afterwards, the vendor's like, "Oh, go check out the big fair," and Hugo's like, "Oh, let's go."
Because the whole town is celebrating being rat free for 3 days.
Yeah. But you get to where the entrance is, and you overhear people talking about how important people are looking for a little kid and a teenage girl who you fit the description. So Amicia decides, well, we better not go. Let's go meet Lucas and Beatrice. And Hugo's sad, and you go back and you meet them, and Hugo has a comment where he's like, "Oh, those people are looking at me funny. They're looking at me strangely, just like their friend Melly had before she decided to leave the group." But ultimately, Hugo accepts the way things are, and Amicia cheers him up. She like holds some goggles over his eyes, and they laugh. And they get to the cart, and it slowly drives away with all of them in the distance, and you can hear them like giggling happily, and it's kind of bittersweet, but hopeful that their future is going to be bright.
And that's it. You get in the cart, it drives away, and it ends.
That's it. Game over.
And like when I first played the final chapter, I'm like, I've had some time to think about it at this point, but when I first played it, I was like, that's it? Like, what's going on? Like, why did that chapter even exist? But since thinking about it, I've realized just because you took out Vitalis doesn't mean this journey's over, right? You still got Hugo, and like I said earlier, Hugo, he still has the Prima Macula. People are still after you.
Yeah.
So really, it's just like a sequel setup chapter, I think, a post-credit sequel setup chapter that is 5 minutes long and only exists for one line.
Yeah, I know you guys have said that you think that the last chapter is pointless. I disagree. I'm a sucker for after credit scenes, even if they're of little substance. But I would have been left wanting if it ended just with Vitalis dying.
See, it didn't though. It ended with Vitalis dying and Hugo looking at him with this look in his eye.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like, that's it. Like, I got this feeling that Hugo might be evil,
That was giving off that vibe. But I like the cozy. It's a bright sunny day. You're attending a fair. It's like how you wanted to see these characters throughout the entire hell they just went through.
Right,
It
you
gives
want
you some
like
of
a
that
happy
relief.
ending,
Yeah.
but it's not actually so happy. I don't know, because like post-credit scenes, they're most common for me, at least, in movies. And when the post-credit scene is like, say like bloopers in a comedy, like funny, good. When it's just something else added on, like just a little extra content, good. When setting up the sequel, I don't know. It's like, and at least with movies, I wish they didn't focus so much on sequels So maybe that's why I have like a bad stigma about a post-credit scene that sets up sequels. But I don't know. I can definitely see a sequel here. A sequel makes sense for all the reasons we've said.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see a sequel after this game did so well and was so well received.
Yeah.
It'll be cool to see what they do with a bigger budget and more resources.
Yeah, let's dive into that for a second. So this game feels very AAA, and that's kind of a trend like lately with AAA games. It's all about franchises. It's all about creating some new IP, and then developers don't let it go. Publishers don't let it go. They want to explore these worlds that they've created and make a bunch of games because it's profitable, and people like to see it. So it seems like every game that comes out now, like they set up a sequel so they can make a new game, and it's cool, but not every game needs to be made into a franchise. Like, is this a game that should be made into a franchise?
Yes.
What do you think? Yeah.
I don't know about franchise. Like, I would hate to see 4 more of these, but because by the 3rd or 4th one, they'd be grasping at straws. But a sequel that deals with Hugo getting a little older, the prima macula, getting to other thresholds, figuring out how that story goes, I think has value.
I want a trilogy. I think that would be cool. I like this world they set up. We're kind of lacking in the, that time period, single player, linear game in the market. So I think it found a great niche. It set up a great world. It's similar, but not similar enough to other IPs. I think it stands out from the crowd, and I'm attached to the characters now.
Yeah, I think a trilogy could work, and I think it would be cool to see Hugo grow up and be cool.
I didn't even think about that. Like 20-year-old Hugo?
Yeah. The Rat King.
Where he's not a little bitch.
And then elderly Amicia.
Could be cool.
Elderly. She's only gonna be 10 years older than us.
That's
Well, I'm
old
saying
for
by the
this time
4th game.
period.
By the 4th game, yeah.
by
Still running
the
around with
4th
a
game,
sling, 60-year-old
yeah.
Amicia.
On the 4th game, they'll reboot it. It'll be one of her children has the bloodline. Yeah, Prima.
And at that point, too much.
What if they do this?
Yeah, that's when it gets bad.
Yeah.
Like Gears in Gears 4.
Yeah.
And Marcus's son. They did the same shit.
What if they go back? What if they make a game or a DLC that's a prequel and you explore
just them being rich and happy?
No, a prequel. So remember in the bathhouse back at the Darun estate, there's those murals and you see like the depiction of something similar that happened in the ancient Roman times.
Oh, okay.
What if they make a game where you're playing as one of the Darun ancestors and it's the same kind of deal? They have the Prima Macula.
Except it's in caveman times.
Yeah.
And it's saber-toothed tigers.
Plague Tale Primal.
A tower of tigers.
So
That could work.
all right, so one thing I wanted to talk about. So we talked about characters a lot and who we liked, who we didn't like. I want to know who's your favorite character from the game?
Amicia. Easily.
Okay. What about you, Jay?
I'm a sucker for a strong female protagonist. It's Amicia for sure. She's a badass by the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked Amicia a lot too, but I think Melly is my favorite character. Roderick's a strong second though, but
Yeah, Roderick's up there.
we spent so much time with Melly and we got to know her so well, and at first you kind of write her off as somebody who's in it for the money, but by the end, after everything that happened, she's really a good person and a badass in her own right.
Yeah, I like Melly, and I like. I wish we could have experienced the freeing and saving of Arthur with her. I think that could have been a cool mission. But I understand, like, we're playing as Amicia and Hugo, so if she's off on her own thing, like she can be off on her own thing.
Spin-off game.
Would you
where
guys
play as Melly?
You know,
What about
no.
DLC where you play as Melly and Arthur when they're like separated from the group for that time skip earlier in the game?
That would be cool.
You
Like
see what
just
they were
like a
doing.
2 or 3 hour DLC.
Yeah. That'll never. I don't think that'll ever happen though, because this game came out 3 years ago, and they're working on the sequel
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Right.
But it'd be cool. I feel like we don't get a ton of that from smaller studios. All the like big studios like Ubisoft, Bethesda, you name it, they all do DLC like that. Like I know AC Valhalla just got a like 20-hour DLC where you play in Ireland, but it'd be kind of cool to see some kind of DLC for this game. But
And where you could get to know Arthur a little more too.
yeah, because I feel like I didn't feel it like when Arthur died. It was sad, but I didn't feel the loss like I felt for Roderick because I didn't really know Arthur as well. Like he
Right.
died, but he kind of was out for himself. Like he wanted to leave, but we don't. I didn't really know his motives, and maybe I would have cared about him more if there was, a mission where you played as Arthur and Melly.
Mm-hmm.
This game came out 3 years ago. Instantly, I put it on my backlog. Everybody was screaming about how good it was, and I think a lot of people missed this game. So I think this was a good one to do for the game club.
Yeah,
Giants of Backlog,
Yeah,
Gob.
I've never heard of this game.
because I think a lot of people slept on it. A lot of people missed out, and now it's as good time as ever to go through and play it. It holds up.
yeah.
Easily holds up.
It's on Game Pass, so go play it.
Yeah, it's exactly. Oh, that reminds me. I need to go either decide whether there's games I still want to play on Game Pass or cancel it because I what do you call it? I subscribed on Game Pass on my PC
Mm-hmm.
and then decided I want to play on Xbox and then subscribed on Xbox. So I need to go cancel both of those if I'm not playing. Well, I gotta cancel one of them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Game Pass, but it has grown my backlog. But that's okay. It's more content for Giants Backlog.
No,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, I haven't pulled the trigger on Game Pass yet. I'm still stuck buying every game I want to play, but
You
know,
bought Plague Tale?
Yeah.
Game Pass
When it
was
came
like
out.
$1. Oh, when it came out.
No, I bought it when it was on sale like a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. Game Pass was $1 for the first month, so that's why I subscribed to it.
Yeah, I mean, I always wait for sales,
That makes sense, yeah.
because things rotate off of Game Pass anyway. But then you get a discount if you want to purchase it, so
Yeah.
it's probably worth the money for me to just
After,
do it.
if you have Game Pass and it rotated off, you get a discount.
Yeah, you get like a 10 or 20% discount on games that are coming off.
Limited time or whenever you decide to do it. After
They
it's
announce
done.
not
like
sure at the
months
time,
ahead, like a couple months ahead of time, like, oh, this game's leaving on this day. Buy it though because you have Game Pass and you get a discount.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think you have a discount on any game on there.
Yeah,
if you wanna
Gotcha.
buy it.
and I like to, I'll probably buy Plague Tale before it goes off, just because I like to have games that I played and liked in my
Library.
collection. Yeah, it's like collecting.
This is your collection now.
Yeah, the poster. That's the collection.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see that wall fill up as we keep going.
Yeah, that's our plan. Is we'll hang a poster for every episode we do,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It'll take us a little bit to fill this wall, which is good.
We'll have to move Godzilla over to make room.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bioshock and Cuphead posters are on their way, so we'll put those up there when we get them.
All right, I'm ready to give this game a score if you guys are.
Yeah.
So, my score for Plague Tale is 8 out of 10. Very strong effort, very good game. Like all the things we touched on, the stealth gameplay, the combat, all very good. They had some tools like being able to leave Hugo behind, dodging, some things that I thought they could have done more with. That takes a point off. And it was a kind of a short game. I wish they would have explored more or added some more depth more time to the game to get to know some of the characters like Arthur better. But for I guess they're an indie studio technically, very good effort, and it was a fun game. 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going 7.5 out of 10. Um, good story. Like Jay said, underutilized time period and place. And I don't know, I enjoyed it, and I think 7.5.
I give this game a 8.75 out of 10. I love this game. It was right on the cusp of being a 9. I think if they do a sequel, it'll easily break the 9 threshold.
It's trash.
Yep.
For me. We'll see. We'll have to do an episode on it.
Yeah.
But I really dug it. Some of these characters are some of the most memorable ones that I've experienced in a game, and they did something unique, and hats off.
I could definitely see the sequel being one of our first games that we, well, depending on when it comes out, but being a game that we do on release.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely. So get subscribed. Go to Giants of Backlog and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Giants of Backlog. Send us, email us questions if you had anything that you wanted us to cover but we didn't. You can email us at giantsofbacklog@gmail.com. We'll answer any questions you have, or happy to write you back, and
we will probably integrate the emails into the future episodes as well.
Yeah,
and in the description.
Yeah, follow us on social media at Giants of Backlog on Twitter, Facebook, and we'll post what games we're going to do before we release the episode, and we'll try to incorporate your emails.
Yep. All of our socials are in the description, so please go ahead and follow us at all of those.
Yeah, and if you like the episode, please share with your friends. If you have anybody who's played Plague Tale or who's playing Plague Tale, I know after I beat a game, the first thing I want to do is talk about it with you guys to see what you thought if you played it, and find deep dives like this. So
yeah, it'll be fun to build this community, and we can collectively be playing through games together, and just the discussion that we'll have as a community is going to be really great. So don't sleep on it. Recommend it to your friends, and we'll all grow together.
Yeah, if you got this far into this, I'm sure, long video,
thank you.
You're not sleeping on it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Especially if you made it this far.
Yeah.
You're real.
All right, Jay, what are we playing next?
All right. Dramatic pause.
Drum roll.
Roblox.
Roblox.
I'm just joking. I've been really in the mood for a puzzle game ever since Kyle Bossman streamed The Lock. So my pick for us to play next is Tacoma.
Tacoma. Wow. All right. So if you're playing through Tacoma, or you want to play through Tacoma, play it and send us questions about Tacoma, and we'll incorporate them into the next episode. But we've been the Giants of Backlog. Thank you for listening. I'm Paul.
I'm John.
And I'm Jay. What are you doing in my waters?